here.
All right, we welcome Kellyanne Conway back to the panel. Kellyanne, you know, I just talked about our model and kind of how it's shrinking as far as numbers of House seats. What are you hearing, number one? And number two, is there any chance that the Republicans don't win the House tonight?
I think there's a very slim chance the Republicans don't win the House tonight. No, we still have many House races to call. And those elections do become a little bit more national. There's no question that the issue set that was bothering people in most places was bothering people in nearly every place. But I will say this. I think the Fox News polling that we got briefed on earlier is very accurate, because we were told anywhere from +1 to +4 nationally. And when you asked the question, what would that translate to seats, it was low end, maybe 20, high end into the 30s. But that's the range I think we're looking at now. And I can't emphasize enough, we won't have, again, maybe ever in our lifetimes, a 63-seat loss, a 53, like 2010, a 54-seat loss. There just aren't enough available seats. Now, one thing I'd like to add to the conversation. In 2020, there were 27 toss-up seats in the House. Republicans won 27 of 27. This time, there were 36 toss-up seats in the House, and Biden had carried 34. So we were already reaching into those. I think there were just more Democratic seats this time, Democratic-held seats that ended up being toss-up seats. But I think you're going to end up with 51, at least 51 in the Senate, and the Republicans will take the House, and Kevin McCarthy will have a larger margin than Nancy Pelosi does now as Speaker. And the 51 is important for another reason. We have probably not mentioned her name much tonight at all. The 51 seats for the Republicans in the Senate prevents Kamala Harris from being the tie-breaking vote anymore. She's not made many records. One that she is she's the most tie-breaking vice president in American history. And I think she beat John Adams or something like that. But people don't want her to have that much power. I mean, the Democrats don't even want her to campaign with them. So I think this is important to note. The other thing I would say is Herschel Walker proved himself here. And I think it's a good lesson. He's coming that close, keeping it that close, made clear the runoff would probably win that one and run the West. I think the big story tonight are some great new Republican women. We can talk about them later if you want. And I think the other story is just the strength of Republican governors. As I said hours ago, confidence in their competence. That's the theme of tonight.
All right, we're going to make a call in the Senate, and that is for North Carolina. We can now project that Ted Budd, the representative from North Carolina, 13th District, will become the senator. That is a hold for Republicans, beating Sherry Beasley. Beasley was the first African-American woman to serve as Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court. Budd is a guy that grew up on a cattle and chicken farm in rural Davie County. He's got a wife and 3 kids, and now will become senator of North Carolina. So if we look to our big picture, that's another hold for Republicans. And we could look at the balance of power, 46-46, majority is 51. Again, there is a path for Republicans to get this majority still tonight. And it's possible that it is with a runoff in Georgia. It's also possible that it's not. Yeah. And they still have a path.
Because Georgia would be a flip, Nevada would be a flip, and Pennsylvania is a potential hold. For that seat. So there's still a lot out there.
We have Chad Pergram standing by, our chief congressional correspondent. And Chad, you're seeing these House races develop. You know more about the House than many people will ever know. And you've forgotten more than people will know. What is your sense tonight as you look at these numbers across the country?
You know, if you go to the beach and you see a wave coming in, it often breaks. Now, in the tsunami election for House Republicans in 2010, Brett, the bottom dropped out for Democrats in September and early October. However, Democrats in the polling never bottomed out like that, anything what we've seen in other wave elections. Now, most bellwether races in the East have gone so far in the direction of Democrats. Jennifer Wexton and Abigail Spanberger claiming victory in Virginia. Spanberger's opponent, Yesli Vega, says there's still thousands of votes to count there. Republican Jen Kiggins defeated 1-6 committee member Elaine Luria in Virginia. But the fact that Democrats held 2 of those 3 seats means no red wave so far. Republicans had hoped to pluck a seat in Rhode Island, but Democrat Seth Magaziner defeated Republican Alan Fung. Democrat Marcy Kaptur held on in Ohio. She is the longest-serving woman in House history. Democrat Greg Landsman defeated Republican Steve Chabot in Cincinnati. So what does this mean? a potential smaller majority for Kevin McCarthy if he becomes Speaker and Republicans win the House. That means possibly more headaches for him trying to control the Republicans if the GOP is in control. Now, McCarthy, he'll have to deal with the Freedom Caucus. They will also demand major investigations of the Biden administration, and they could play Russian roulette with the debt ceiling and a potential government shutdown. Now, here's one thing to look at. If Democrats narrowly lose the House, Fox is told that could mean that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi stays on. Again, a lot of people are looking at her decision-making process here. She was supposed to go to the climate conference in Egypt at the end of this week. We don't know for sure if she's going at this stage because of what happened to her husband a couple of weeks ago. Some people said to me she has to make an announcement maybe before she goes. The issue here with Nancy Pelosi is we don't know what she is thinking, but we know how she thinks. And I have been told by several sources that they think that she might double down, and if she were to step aside in these circumstances, that would be a sign of weakness, and that's not how she wants to go out. And in fact, Democrats are not scheduled to have their leadership elections until the end of November or early December, and so this could be hanging out there for quite a while.
Chad, just to refocus on that comment about the size of the majority, you know, if we had the 30 seats, now maybe we're down to 20 or even fewer, but it's still a majority. You said it makes it tougher for then Speaker McCarthy if it's a little bit more narrow because he has to herd the cats and make sure that everybody gets on the same page. And there have been problems before, like Speaker Boehner had and others trying to get legislation through like that.
That's right. And this is why it's going to be a problem for Kevin McCarthy. As I always say, it's about three things: the math, the math, the math. Nancy Pelosi with a narrow majority, you know, they're at just, 222 seats right now, 220 seats, I should say. With that narrow majority, she is able to thread that needle over and over again. She has done that for years. Kevin McCarthy has never demonstrated that prowess. That's going to be a problem, especially when you have a lot of conservatives, folks to the right, Freedom Caucus members demanding, no on spending bills and demanding investigations, maybe even trying to impeach the president or other cabinet administration officials. That's going to be a problem, threading that needle and passing those bills if it is that narrow majority, Brad.
We'll see. I mean, there's a lot of House races, to Kellyanne's point, yet to call. Chad Pergram.
Look at Oregon tonight. Look at Oregon.
We'll look at.
We're watching that. Thank you very much, Chad. Chad Pergram. Let's bring in Trey Gowdy with a look at how you think this shapes up and what is it like for Kevin McCarthy in this kind of scenario.
You know, I was sitting here thinking, I was with Kevin the day he withdrew from the last speaker's race. One of the darkest days for those of us that are friends with Kevin. So I think he would take the speakership no matter the margin. It is true that his life would be more difficult with a smaller margin, although Jim Jordan is unquestionably the leader of what people call the Freedom Caucus. He's not the chair, but he's the leader. And he's in line to be the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee because he and Kevin do have a good relationship. The other thing that has not been mentioned is the committee composition. The smaller the margin, the smaller your majority on the committees. And the reason we know Justin Amash's name and David Schweikert is because they voted against Paul Ryan's budget. And Boehner punished them for that. So you don't want a one-vote majority on the Budget Committee or Appropriations Committee. You want 3 or 4 votes so the fame-seeking caucus loses its influence. Look, Kevin will take the speakership no matter the number. His life is easier if it's 15 to 20 than if it's 5 to 10.
We welcome Juan Williams back to the panel. Juan, there's a lot of bright spots for Democrats tonight to look at. Obviously, Republicans focus on Florida. Since Reconstruction, there has not been a time when Florida doesn't have any Democrats in statewide office. Florida is looking more like Arkansas tonight than it is like Florida of old. So how do you judge what you're seeing in some of these races and the result down in Florida?
Well, first, let me just say in response to Trey that and I guess a little bit to you too, Kellyanne, I just don't see Kevin McCarthy as Nancy Pelosi. And I think Chad Pergram picked
neither
up on
do
it. I just don't see that happening. I just don't see it.
He's not going to spend money that
he's not going to. He's not.
the
prowess, the ability to get something done with a narrow margin, I think is much more difficult. I think that's why we went through Paul Ryan, John Boehner, and others in trying to do that with the Republican caucus. And it's proven very difficult, so it's quite a challenge. I wish him the best, but that's quite a challenge.
Well, how much is he going to be able to do anyway? I mean, he's got, if they only win one house, nobody's going to be able to do much of anything.
You're going to be able to block
Everybody.
things.
That's a problem for Joe Biden, though.
And
That's
it is
mainly
a problem
yes,
for Joe
it is.
Biden.
I mean, he's going to become irrelevant almost immediately, and there's going to be a reckoning in his party as to whether they can even have him run for re-election. He wants to. Why not?
No, but wait a second. How is he irrelevant? Wait a minute. He got a lot of his legislative agenda done in the first 2 years. He is going to,
Democratic votes.
if the Senate holds, let's say it's a 50-50, he still gets the judges. He still gets to make an effort in terms of countering efforts, a lot of them coming from Freedom Caucus people, to stop aid to the Ukraine. This is a bigger fight.
Yeah, Josh?
You know, this is going to be a big headache for Kevin McCarthy. This is looking like a ripple, not a wave. And the margin that McCarthy is going to have is going to be very dependent on a lot of these very Freedom Caucus aligned Republicans that are probably going to give him a lot of headaches if he does get the majority. I'm having a lot of deja vu from 2020, where you got a narrow House majority, a narrow Senate majority, and it's all coming down to Georgia. We're a divided country. Pelosi had lots of headaches this Congress dealing with her left-wing members. It may be that Kevin McCarthy has a lot of headaches dealing with some right-wing members in the next Congress.
Remember the last time, Britt, and Georgia, we had 2 Senate runoffs.
Right.
And it determined the control of the U.S. Senate.
Right.
And a lot of people point to the former president and his speeches up in the north part of Georgia, and they say that didn't help this dynamic because he was just coming out of his race.
Right.
It could potentially come down to one race, control of the Senate.
Control of the Senate. It could again. And of course, the one thing we learned from 2020 was, you know, it used to be when there were liberals or certainly moderates in some number in the Republican caucus and centrists in the Democratic caucus, that the control by one party or the other was not always what it seemed to be.
Right.
Because you could pick up votes from the other side on certain issues and you could build coalitions back and forth. As polarized as we are now, you don't see that anymore. What you see is party line votes, basically. And, you know, some people, you'll pick up a few votes maybe, but it isn't the way it used to be. So we had this very narrow win for the Democrats to get control of Congress this last time. They had control of the House. They got control of the Senate by the narrowest conceivable margin. And what did Joe Biden do with that? He said, mandate. Right, I got a mandate. I'm going to be FDR. I'm going to out Obama, and that is what led him to the agenda that he pursued, and to the situation where he and his party find themselves now, losing control of the House. And if they lose it narrowly and hold the Senate, I think he's going to say mandate.
Yeah.
Well, mandate for what? He can't do much.
Well, I know that, but the question has always been, what kind of adjustment would he make if he lost control of one or both houses of the Congress? If it goes this way, he will be less incentivized, in my view, to adjust in the way, for example, Bill Clinton famously did.
Yeah, I think, and in fact, I think that there's pressure on him to do some adjusting. Earlier in the evening, Brett Baer was saying to me, what about a statement from the president? And I think that now, it seems to me, he really has to speak to the country. One of the things that came to mind as you were talking, Britt, is that we don't have moderates in Congress in the way that we used to. We used to have moderates in both parties.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
And now you don't have them. So you can't make deals that you were describing.
Right.
And as a those people have been punished, pushed out. Well, now for Joe Biden, if he is truly a moderate, he's got to stand up and say, here's the example of what I plan to do, how I plan to reach out to people. He got some bipartisan votes, right? Infrastructure was bipartisan.
Impeachment was probably the biggest bipartisan one, yeah.
There you go. Are you, Carl, good with the characterization of a ripple tonight from Josh?
Well, it's more than a ripple because, look, I think in all
It's
likelihood...
a Gulf-sized wave, like Gulf Shore?
It's enough. We'll take it. I don't know why this conversation won. We'll take it.
230. That's what we got when Newt
amazing.
Gingrich moved into the Speaker's office in 1995 for the first time in 40 years, had a Republican occupant. If we go from 213 to 230, I'm going to be content because that's sufficient to govern in the condition that we are. I'm not ready to quickly write off Kevin McCarthy as unable to manage this group of Republicans or these Republicans being unable to achieve things. It's not going to be big transformative things. And look, I take a little bit of optimism from what happened last year, because all three of the bipartisan issues, whether it was the gun control issue or infrastructure or the China bill, did not happen because of the intervention of Joe Biden. It did not happen because of the White House. It happened because individual members said, Republican and Democrat, we want to get something done. And that spirit is still there. And I suspect the right kind of committee chairs, like on China, I suspect Michael McCaul, new chairman of Foreign Relations Committee, is going to be able to fashion constructive policies towards China. And financial services, the new chairman there, Patrick McHenry, is probably going to want to do some stuff about crypto, and it's going to be constructive. But it's not going to be transformative. It's not going to be the top down. It's going to be the bottom up, and that's healthy.
And we may see some continuing consensus on foreign policy,
Absolutely.
particularly as regards Ukraine and China, where you know those two words were not in this campaign.
Yeah.
There's a lot of drama left tonight, and I think we should go to Georgia because we'e been pointing to Georgia.
Let's take a look.
Bill, that's
Wow.
you know, it's 923 votes, and the rules in Georgia say 0.5% of total votes cast is an automatic recount. They can order a recount. Any candidate or political party may petition for one when results are within 0.5% of total votes cast. A losing candidate may request a recount. We're at 923 votes.
Yep.
And we have 300,000 left out. Let's be careful.
Still?
No,
Still.
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Where do you see those, Carl?
Well, there are a lot of there are lots
Gwinnett?
lots of Gwinnett. DeKalb has a bunch out, but Cobb's got a bunch out.
Those are the big counties around Atlanta.
Big counties around Atlanta, but then you go out in the hinterlands and you start to get to some counties that that
Shall we go purple? I mean, it's after midnight. Okay, so Carl, this is what you were just talking about, Greater Atlanta. In the rurals, here's one that popped up. Come here. Sumter County, is that on your list?
Yep. Go to Columbia, which has only got 39% of the vote.
Give me
you
one
have all those
moment
memorized?
here. Oh, hey,
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, we looked at this a moment ago, too. Yeah, you're right. You're under 40% of the estimated vote coming in there. Yeah, okay, all right. So you mentioned Gwinnett. We were well below 61% an hour ago. Now we're above 60%. So it appears they're counting votes. I know another network reported that they were done for the night. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if we've confirmed that at all. Gwinnett's got a lot of people, right? DeKalb, this is just east of downtown Atlanta. You're not even at 75% just yet. So point taken. Cobb County, northwest of the city, you're at 72%. So, yeah, I mean, we come back to the same thing we talked about, an hour ago. These counties here that surround Atlanta help determine statewide races, and right now there's still some outstanding vote. Can I show you guys something?
Yep, we got a call in just a minute, but go
Okay,
ahead.
I'm going to do it quickly here. Texas-Mexican border. It's a bit of a stunner, right? Henry Cuellar has won. Looks like he's going to win re-election. We got a check mark by him. Big disappointment for Cassie Garcia here in Texas 15. Republicans felt really good about Monica de la Cruz. Looks like they're going to win that race here. This is Myra Flores. She won that special election a couple months ago. Right now she's trailing by 8 points in Texas 34, which is down here in Galveston. If I can do one more, guys, there were 10 Republicans in the House who voted to impeach Donald Trump. There are 2 who still have a job today. One is Dan Newhouse up here in the state of Washington. Well, look at that. He has been confirmed. He will go back to Washington, Newhouse in that district in the state of Washington. And down here in California, as the votes trickle in here now, this is California 22, a new district for David Valadao. Come with me here for a second. Come on. We almost had it here, guys. New district for Valadao. Right now, he has a slight lead with 21% reporting. You could have 2 Republicans who voted for impeachment fighting for their political life tonight, and you could have them both survive in this election.
That's really fascinating. All right, we've got another call.
We do. We have Washington, which has been a very closely watched race, and Patty Murray will return to Washington, D.C. This will be her 6th term. She was elected back in 1988. Tiffany Smiley was definitely someone who Republicans were excited about, thought that this could be an upset in a part of the country that normally does not see any, significant red support. And she, I think was a person who was inspiring to a lot of people. Her husband was blinded on duty in Iraq, and she worked hard to help him rehabilitate, and he became, an active duty blind serviceman, which before that had not happened. So she, is somebody who may have a future in politics, and she held up, fairly well and gave it a good race. But Patty Murray has prevailed. A lot of money went into this race late in the game.
All right, we have another call here, and that is the Fox News Decision Desk can call Utah for Senator Mike Lee. He will win convincingly in Utah. This was considered to be close at one time. Independent Evan McMullin, who was really getting supported from the Democrats and all kinds of Democratic money going into that race. And this is a win for Senator Mike Lee, who returns to the Senate. This is obviously a hold. And so with that and these two race calls, where is our balance of power in the Senate? Well, 47-47. Majority is 51. Remember, we started the night at 50-50 with Kamala Harris, the vice president, breaking the tie in legislation. So there we have it, 6 white squares. That's what we're waiting on.
To be filled in.
6 white squares. We will continue to look for those 6 white squares after this.
All right, let's take you to New Mexico, where we also have a call to make this evening, and it is in the New Mexico governor's race. The incumbent, Michelle Lujan Grisham, will hang on. Mark Ronchetti, who is a former meteorologist who was running against her, will not prevail in the race in New Mexico.
Ran a tight race, one that Republicans thought they could pull off an upset in New Mexico. It was a bit of an uphill battle, but he comes up short. He really went after Lujan Grisham on spending, on unemployment, on inflation, and on her health care and COVID regulations, and obviously the border as well, but comes up short. Alicia Acuna is live at Kari Lake's campaign headquarters in Arizona. We're waiting on more data there as you see the breakdown. 56-43, and again, Arizona is early vote early, so you have to watch those numbers. Alicia?
That's right. Yes, that's right, Brett. We are expecting those numbers to change as we go into the night. And in fact, we have been told by the Maricopa County Elections Division to expect changes. They are going to be working through the night, and that they do anticipate that by Friday, they will have 99% of the vote counted. We could be in for a long ride here, especially when we're talking about the governor's race. We have now heard from both candidates for governor here in the state of Arizona. Very different messages here. The Democrat, Katie Hobbs, did issue a statement, and she came out to talk to people at her watch party, thanking those who work for her, but also defending the sanctity of the election process here, believing that the counties here have run free and fair elections. However, I should also mention she is the current Secretary of State. It is part of her job description to make sure that those things occur. She has said we will be in for a long night. The Republican, Kari Lake, also said we will be in for a long night. She had a different message, though. She encouraged the people here at this watch party to stay and join her in the fight, anticipating a future fight in this process as they wait. She did make a point, though, Brett, that I want to point out, because right now she is behind in the polls. In the primary, on primary night, she was behind for most of the night, and it wasn't until 2 days later that she actually was determined to be the victor. So we do need to be patient here, watch these numbers come in from other parts of the state and see how things lay out. On the Senate race, we have not heard from either of the candidates tonight. Brett.
Okay, Alicia Acuna will head back when we get more news. Aisha Hasni is in Atlanta at Herschel Walker's campaign headquarters. Aisha.
Hey, Brett, good evening to you. Well, you know, when the booze is gone, that means it's probably time to go home, and that's what's happening here. The bar is about to close. The crowd has thinned out quite a bit in the last hour or so, and the Walker camp just announced that they're about to kick us out in about 12:45, in a couple of minutes here. They're going to lose the ballroom. But look, they say they anticipated a very long night, and they anticipated a late call, and they know they might not get a call sometime tonight at all. Maybe not even, maybe later tomorrow. Also notable, just to point out, this was the first time really that I've heard on the campaign trail the Walker camp even mention a chance of a runoff. They've been so confident about having a call tonight that they've really never even mentioned the possibility of a runoff, and they finally did mention it tonight. Senator Raphael Warnock also taking the stage not long ago, telling the crowd that he is still feeling good and also telling them to keep the faith. Look, this race has been very tight because Herschel Walker really had an uphill battle. He really had to convince Republicans to get on his side. He had to shore up his base. He was fighting a lot of battles, including attack ads from the Democrats based on things that had happened in the past, allegations about abortions that he, of course, denied. And in fact, there were some Republicans that really weren't sure up until the last moment. I talked to a man in Newnan, Georgia, a couple days ago who told me that he voted too early and he really wasn't sure about Walker when he went in to vote, and it really wasn't until a couple of days ago that he felt, okay, I made the right choice and I picked the right guy. But that's kind of what we've been hearing on the ground, on the trail here in Georgia. So now it's just a wait and see game to see if one of these candidates can actually break that 50% threshold and come out as a winner tonight.
Aisha, thank you so much. I know there's a bar around there someplace.
I know.
I'm hoping
It's
we
like,
can get you a
I've never
cocktail.
heard of a candidate saying, like, you know, we only have the ballroom until 12:45, so everybody has to go home. But I guess in Georgia, you're conditioned to think we're going to for a runoff. So we might as well rent the place again tomorrow. Let's go to Alex Hoff.
It's not an open bar
Alex,
forever.
there never is, right?
Yes.
Alex Hoff is joining us now. She's at the Laxalt campaign headquarters in Nevada. Hi, Alex.
Hi, guys. Good to be with you. Yeah, still a whole lot of action here tonight and a clear air of excitement. And if you look at a place like Washoe County, you know why. That's very purple, highly populated, the second most so in the state. And it appears right now that Adam Laxalt has far exceeded expectations in a county like that. That's really up for grabs. You never know which way it's going to go. But when you look at these day of totals among registered voters, that's really only part of the equation here. You have to look at something like mail-in ballots, too. I mean, those are extraordinarily popular. If those were submitted and arrived prior to Election Day, those were already included in that early vote count. But for those who had submitted their mail-in ballot, either by postmarking it today or dropping one off in a drop box, well, that tally, that's not necessarily going to be done tonight. That could take a couple more days, and we are dealing with perhaps tens of thousands there. So whatever we are seeing tonight, there has to be that air of preparation as well, that things could change. Now, something interesting, too, that's caused a bit of a delay here in terms of results. Results cannot be tabulated until the last person who was in line at 7 p.m., who then waited in line for their turn, has cast their ballot. It's my understanding that people may still be voting at this hour right now. So despite weather being pretty bad across the entire state, rain here in Nevada, here in Las Vegas, and then snow up in Reno, these lines were really, really long. It's led to a little back and forth in the courts with Cortez Masto, who was hoping to extend these times, the polls to be open until 9 p.m. A judge ordered tonight that will not be the case. So we'll see those numbers starting to come in, but they will be in flux for quite some time, guys.
Alex, thank you. Thank you very much.
Rich Edson is live at the Fetterman campaign headquarters in Pittsburgh. Rich, seems like it's getting a little closer. What's the feeling there?
Good evening, Brett. You know, the bar still is open here since we're doing that check-in. And if they decide to keep this bar open as long as it's going to take to count all these ballots, they'll probably break some local liquor laws. But we are still waiting for John Fetterman to come out. It is unclear if and when he will come out. We've been asking his campaign. They haven't really told us there's any sense of timing here. The crowd has begun to filter out a little bit. It is getting pretty late here as this begins to languish. But when this night started, the Fetterman campaign was telling us us to watch Erie County, that was their bellwether. 4 hours later, they contact us. They say, hey, guys, look again at Erie County. It had Fetterman up by about 9 points. Compare that to what Joe Biden did a couple of years ago in the election. Biden won it by about 1,500 votes, about 1 percentage point. They feel, and they've been saying, that they have been overperforming Joe Biden's 2020 election across the state, and they feel really good about it. They're watching those suburban counties around Philadelphia that they hope will come home for them, as they have been trending towards the Democrats in the last few elections, and they're hoping that that continues. Another issue here is that, you can't open the mail-in ballots in this Commonwealth, in this state, until 7 o'clock in the morning. That process just began this morning. There are 67 counties. They have their own protocols, their own way of counting these ballots. Some have their own rules. There have been a couple of Supreme Court rulings within the last week to try to clarify whether the ballots that you have your date signed on the back, whether they're counted, whether they're set aside. The state Supreme Court came down and said, if you don't put the right date on it, if you don't have a date on it, those ballots have to be put aside. That was the result of a Republican lawsuit. The Republicans won that one. Democrats in the Fetterman campaign are suing to undo that so that they do count those ballots. That is still being litigated. So you have that hovering over this whole issue here on top of a day that you have people going to the polls. So there are a lot of different issues here, a lot of different processes in place depending on which county you go to. But as they are moving closer and closer to a resolution here, Fetterman folks say they are confident, just given how well they've performed with the ballots that have come in the places they've come in compared to what Joe Biden did just a couple of years ago. The Secretary of State's office said this could take a couple more days after this election day before we do have an actual result here, but we're watching. Brett?
Yep. Welcome to Pennsylvania, right? Rich, thank you very much. Let's bring back in Ben Domenech has joined us again.
Did you get the baton from Britt Hume?
I did, actually.
He
gave me the slap on the back as he walked out.
You have to wear your glasses down on your nose.
Oh, gosh.
The Ben Franklin.
Yes.
Ben, when I listen to this, Pennsylvania, so the Supreme Court says, this is our decision. You have to have the date on the envelope. If you don't, it doesn't count. That's why all over the envelope it says, have you dated your ballot before you finished it? And when you fold it over again, it tells you again exactly what to do. And they're going to appeal this, and then it can go on and on and on. Why can't they get their act together in Pennsylvania?
I mean, this is a broader question. I think Pennsylvania has its own unique set of historical problems. But I think that particularly for people who are watching this tonight, people all across the country have to be asking, in 2022, what do we have to do to get some clarity about the results of elections? Even if I'm on the losing side, I would like to know. And I would like to know in a speedy and rapid fashion and with some confidence in the result. And so we look at a result of what happened in Florida, and that's, they have pre-canvassing there. They have a different way of approaching things. I would like to see more dedication to solving these problems across the country. But just, overall, I have to say it's amazing that we have perhaps the most expensive Senate race in American history, resulting potentially in the election of John Fetterman. That just seems very odd to me. And I think it's going to take a while to sort through everything. We don't have enough clarity yet about the result in Pennsylvania. But overall, I know that there are a lot of Republicans who are disappointed with this outcome, who had a lot of high hopes for that state.
Well, not only that, but high hopes, for a broader spread in the House. The fact that we cannot call the House yet, Carl, is concerning because it's getting tighter and you got to go race by race. There's no network, no organization that has officially called the House for the GOP as of yet.
I'm not necessarily surprised because, look, realize it comes down to a couple of strange states. Pennsylvania, which is going to have a long count. New York, which has got a notorious reputation for a long count. And California, which just barely closed its polls and is totally mail-in ballot. In fact, 3 states, with Washington State, Oregon, and California, are going to have 6 or 7 seats among them. And then Nevada, which we're waiting to, they've ostensibly closed the polls, but they got to wait until they finish. Everybody in line walks out before they can start to report, and there are going to be a couple of seats there that are up for grabs. So I'm not, I'm with Ben. Florida after 2000 said, let's get it right. passed a bill with large bipartisan numbers. I don't know why Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, for example, can't get it right when it comes to mail-in ballots.
Well, let's go to Wisconsin. Can we do that, Bill?
Yep.
Because they're getting
Do anything
close
you
there.
want.
They're getting close to a big dump, I think. In
This
Milwaukee.
one is on the edge.
This is baked, right?
This is, yeah. Look, there's not much left out there. Grant County, which is home of the very all-important town of Cuba, city of presidents, where every street corner has a crudely crafted visage of a president of the United States on the one street that runs through the town, north-south, has not yet counted its votes yet, but I know how it's going to go. And that's going to simply add to the Republican
Hey, what
column.
about Milwaukee County there?
Very
Go
little
Purple
out.
Rain? Is that what you wanted to do there?
Yeah.
Right down here?
So they just had a dump
That's
there.
Grant. That's what Carl was just talking about, Grant County. Go ahead, Brett.
Milwaukee County, where
Yeah, this is where you get a lot of Democratic votes. You're only at 3/4 of the vote in. All right, you're only 74, 75%.
Go to Ozaki, just north of there, and go to the two counties south of Milwaukee.
So down here, Waukesha.
No, Waukesha is to the west.
Yeah.
Directly to the north are Washington and Ozaki. Go to Ozaki.
Right there now.
All right. So 87%. Now go south of town. There are two counties down there that don't
Washington, the WOW counties. Yeah.
Well,
south. You're in the upper 80s there.
South of Milwaukee.
Racine and then Kenosha.
Right.
Okay, so Johnson's hanging on. I don't really think this is that much of a discussion.
No.
I think Johnson's hanging on by 2 points right now.
Right. And what you've got in Milwaukee, you've got in 3 counties bordering the north and south, you've got an roughly equal number of votes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's say that we eventually call this for Johnson. In our what-if scenario.
Are we doing this just to sort of give ourselves nightmares?
Not so much. All right. We can play the game here. Louisiana. I think Wisconsin is in Johnson's pocket there. I just look at the Arizona results. I don't know what happens in Nevada, but that's where we are. We can't make a call in Georgia, right? We can't make a call in Nevada.
But let's just say Nevada. I know it's early, but let's just say. What if? Republican.
Got it. By the way, you have to say that, Brett, okay? Otherwise, I lose my job.
What if? What if? What if?
Hypothetical scenario.
Okay, here we go. And if Fetterman...
And there you go.
Shoot.
Okay.
Well, at least he said shoot.
I was going to say, that's quite good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, you got it. Okay, hang with me, guys. It won't take
Okay,
long.
right there.
PA, boom.
So PA.
I'll see you on December 6th. All right, on Tuesday night.
December 6th.
Same time, same bat channel.
What happens then?
Back in
It's
Atlanta.
deja vu. It's 2020 all
Georgia
over again.
all
It
over
comes
again.
down to Georgia. I think Walker has the momentum and he wins that runoff. But ahead of that, I just want to say that the worst endorsement, really probably the worst candidate for the Republicans that's hurting the Senate candidate this time is Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
He lost so miserably to Josh Shapiro, who almost all but stopped campaigning. Why would he anymore? When Mastriano became the nominee. I think it's hurting Oz in Pennsylvania. I look at Erie. That's a county I mentioned often as campaign manager in 2016. I kept talking about the collar counties around Philadelphia, Luzerne, Erie. Erie County went from Obama, Trump, Biden. Fetterman's +9 right now with 95% of the vote in. That's a scary number if you're the Oz campaign right now. And for Mastriano to lose to, what did you have there, 12 points or so in the governor's race?
Yeah.
It really hurts. He stopped campaigning. Nobody can find him, wouldn't engage the media, hardly went out there, raised no money. It hurts in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And I would say, I said this going into tonight, I'm going to say it again. I know we're focused on Senate and House, but not getting some of these governorship acts in Pennsylvania, in Michigan, certainly, in New Mexico.
It hurts the machine for 24.
And it just hurts overall because they've got chief executives on the other side.
Yeah, and obviously it has had a big impact, made it a very heavy lift for Oz in this race. And, you know, you look across the places where people were able to really help out, and that is not one of them. I mean, that is, you know, is this the candidate quality question that was discussed? And, you know, where does the blame lie for that?
Well, there were 6 or 7 candidates in that race. In full disclosure, my firm represented a different one. Jake Corman is the state Senate pro tem. When John Fetterman had a stroke, Jake took over as lieutenant governor, acting lieutenant governor. There were really good candidates in that race. And, you know, Trump got in there late with that endorsement. Yeah. Maybe earlier would have helped, I don't know. But you cannot, as an endorsed candidate, whether President Bush endorses you, President Trump, whoever endorses you, you have to do the work. These people can't put you on their backs and carry you over. They're not running for Senate in your state or governor in your state. And he just didn't do anything. The media couldn't find him. The Republican apparatus couldn't find him. A lot of prominent Republicans, including donors in Pennsylvania, said, we're backing Oz, even though, like me, they backed McCormick first. We're backing Oz, but we're not going for Mastriano. It really hurt in Pennsylvania.
This is a lot tighter than people thought going in to this night. A lot of the polls for these Senate races are right on. A lot of projections for the House maybe a little shy for Republicans, and there's a lot to learn tonight, and we're going to learn more on the other side of this break. Okay, welcome back. We've got a number of races on the board that we are tracking as the raw vote continues to come in. We just heard that Grant County came in Wisconsin, thanks to Carl's push. Then we've got, look at Georgia and Pennsylvania. Those two very close. We're switching now. There you go. Wisconsin in the bottom corner. That could be close to a call soon. Dana, you said that the Democrats are saying their youth vote?
So this is pretty interesting. You know, one of the most profound things you can say as a pundit is that turnout is what's going to matter. But of course that's the case. I just think this is pretty interesting. When you look at this Senate race in Wisconsin, the polling had shown Ron Johnson had quite pulled ahead, maybe tightened it a little bit, but he was ahead. Right now, it's looking like it's pretty close. And Wisconsin Democrats are reporting that their youth vote was at 360% of where it had been. Black vote at 123%, and the women vote at 137%. Again, those are the Wisconsin Democrats' numbers. I don't know if they're accurate or not. But it's interesting. Somebody like a Mandela Barnes probably is quite attractive to some of the younger people in Wisconsin that does have a pretty big Democratic base. And if they turned out in that way, that could have made this race that close.
We welcome Shannon Bream, anchor of Fox News Sunday.
Good evening, or should I say good morning?
Good morning.
To everyone here. The Red Bulls are
You've been looking at the Fox News voter analysis, and Martha was saying earlier, it's like two different countries focusing on two different sets of issues. What are you seeing tonight?
It is. Well, it's interesting. Of course, the polling had all showed us that the economy and inflation was really concerning to people. But there were other polls that did show us for certain groups, abortion, as we knew all summer, overturning Roe v. Wade at the Supreme Court, that was going to be a motivator. And it helped in the polling over the summer for Democrats. Now, there are those who are saying now that it shouldn't have been brushed aside so lightly in the last few weeks, that maybe those people were truly motivated and they actually did show up and they early voted, and there was nothing that was going to dissuade them from the way that they voted weeks ago on that particular issue. So even though the economy stayed #1 for almost everyone, it really didn't recede maybe as much as the Republicans had thought it did the last month or so for a lot of early voters.
Was there anything else that stood out for you?
The youth vote is interesting because we know when they show up, they tend to be more progressive. They tend to be to the left. There's always this poo-pooing about whether they're actually showing up, because we hear this rock the vote and this stuff every time. But it looks like they actually, in bigger numbers than a lot of people expected, did show up.
Yeah, you know, the other thing that strikes me, well, Kellyanne made the point earlier that of all the polls that we have been looking at over the last week, and everything that every one of us read and heard from different strategists around both sides of the aisle, that it was getting redder and redder and redder. They appear, at least at this point, to not be correct. But the Fox News voter analysis numbers that we all got to look at right before we came out here seem to be much more in the ballpark of what we're actually seeing play out here. So, you know, credit to them for being one of the only measures that we have seen that actually sounds like it kind of may have nailed it.
Credit to them for staying in the field, too. Those polls were hot off the press. A lot of people stopped their polling a week or so before the election, and that's when a lot of these independents are deciding what to do.
Yeah, and ours is unique in that the conversations start with more than 100,000 voters on Halloween, and they go through the end of Election Day today. Another interesting data point in that was that even though there were all these people who were very upset with President Biden feeling like 6 out of 10, thinking he's failing on the economy and all these other things, it doesn't mean that they went over to Republicans. What we saw in that that data tonight in that conversation we had is that some of them still showed up and voted for him. Some of them were unhappy because they didn't think he was progressive enough. Now, they're not going to cross the aisle and vote for a Republican, but they still decided to show up and vote for him.
And I think we're also seeing that they didn't necessarily blame the candidate for what they are upset with the president
White House.
about. One other thing I would just mention is I'm thinking about John Fetterman and the fact that they did debates and they did them after a lot of people started voting.
They did one.
In Pennsylvania. They did one debate, and we did a town hall with Ryan and with Vance in Ohio. There was such a dearth of experience for people to be able to watch the two candidates in the places where they were voting actually get up on a stage and talk to each other and be questioned. And I'm just wondering if, that had an impact on people's desire to get out there and vote, having actually watched them on their feet against
Mo
each other.
Alithi back with us on the panel. I mean, what about that? I mean, is it fair? It's obviously the candidate's prerogative, and maybe they watched in the COVID time where now President Biden had success not doing a lot of engagement and doing a lot from his home, but it may have worked for some of these candidates to stay out of the spotlight.
It really struck me, and I think I started noticing this maybe about a month or so ago. We are maybe at just a couple of cycles away from saying goodbye to debates in some statewide races, right? We've just
It would be sad, though.
it would
That's a
be
shame,
sad.
but it'd be sad.
But I mean, how many of these marquee races this year saw only one debate?
Let
But
me
it
just tell you
also
this.
shows
We work the phones a ton. We offered town halls and debates to every major campaign, and we got one town hall where they both agreed to appear.
But what's also interesting is I really wonder how much any of these debates are actually moving voters right now. We all saw the almost near universal reaction to the Pennsylvania Senate race, where you had Democrats and Republicans out there saying, my goodness, can John Fetterman rebound from this? It didn't seem to have moved the needle at all if these numbers continue to hold. He's kind of in the same position he was in right before. It actually reminds me of the Access Hollywood tapes, when the entire political media ecosystem kind of blew up and said, this is the end of the Trump campaign. But voters who were against him remained against him. Those who were for him remained for him. It didn't move anything.
But in Fetterman Oz, if I could just say, they have 50 days of early voting. It started on September 19th. They didn't debate until October 25th.
Right.
That's a whole lot. That's different from saying, okay, well, you maybe have 2 weeks of early voting. I don't understand how in the world Pennsylvania says that you need 50 days of early voting. And I don't know how this would work in terms of the rules, but perhaps instead of the candidates being the ones who decide if they're going to debate, maybe it's the voters who say, no, we want you to debate, and that's going to be a condition upon which we will have your nomination certified.
Well, Trey, what about that? I mean, to Mo's point, we are so divided as a nation, everybody goes to their team corner. And so can candidates get by without saying, we get together and debate? What happens in a presidential if both sides say, forget it, we're not doing the presidential commission?
The RNC's already said they're not going to play in the traditional commission debates in the general election.
To refresh my recollection, you might recall better than I think a prominent Republican candidate for president did skip a debate.
That's right.
And he wound up winning. I think we're in a blue no matter who, red till I'm dead state in this country. And I think party identity trumps almost everything else. Now, when will it change? When there are more independent voters, when there are people that have not yet made up their minds. But I do question, and I defer. All I did was run for office. I don't understand politics. I do question how many undecided voters there truly still are.
Yeah.
Ben, what about that? I mean, the split, the country, I mean, how does anything get done in this environment?
It doesn't, first off. But I think to Trey's point, and it's funny, he says he doesn't understand politics. He's the only person on here who's been elected to anything last time we checked. This is an odd moment because it's difficult to assess this from a number of different directions. You have these overall trends, these fundamentals that are supposed to lead you to a point of analysis about a midterms. Right track, wrong track. and the popularity of the president. Both of those indicated a strong Republican night. And yet you also had a huge, almost unprecedented number of outsider candidates running in statewide elections. Now, outsider candidates can win in congressional races, they can win down ballot, but running statewide is pretty challenging. Now, the person who endorsed them in this case, former president, was someone who had the ability to come in as an outsider, wreck the system, break the rules, and still win. But that's not true of all these people. And I think that the candidate quality measure here is something that we really are going to have to go back and look at. And to Kellyanne's point about Doug Mastriano, there is a point where the candidate quality is so low that they actually drag other people down. And in some cases, where even having a popular governor is not enough to drag you over that 50% mark.
Can I offer a slight pivot? Instead of candidate quality, performance quality, I mean, to use a sports analogy, Brett, you make more improvement from game 1 to game 2 than at any other point. It is hard when game 1 is a statewide race for the United States Senate or governor. It's hard.
Yeah.
Carl,
I want to say, oh, sorry.
I mean, you're typing away. You got to share what you're typing.
Well, I agree. People either get better running as candidates or not, and it's better to have run for something than to, before you jump up on a bigger stage. But it is a question that every candidate faces in every single contest they raise. In 1999, George W. Bush, having run for governor in the second most populous state in the Union and having been actively involved in his father's campaign, thought he knew everything about running for president, and 3 months into it said, this is a bigger challenge than I could ever imagine. So you're right. It's nice to have somebody who's at least run for something so that they know what the tempo of it is and what it demands of them, and has perfected some of those skills of reaching out to people and communicating a message. So we do have a number of outstanding races that we're looking at. We're going to wait, obviously, for Georgia here, and maybe getting closer to making a few calls. So we'll continue to kind of take it around the horn here while we wait to see if we can.
Okay, we are going to make a call. Here it is. Fox News can project that Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman will win the Pennsylvania Senate race over Dr. Mehmet Oz. This is a huge win for the Democrats. It is obviously also a pickup. This was Pat Toomey's seat. This was the most focused race that we looked at in this cycle. Obviously, Fetterman had a stroke in his primary. He had, as Mo Alithi referenced, a very bumpy debate October 25th with Mehmet Oz, where both sides of the aisle questioned his fitness for office. He battled back after that and had the support of not only President Biden, but former President Obama, and like Kathy Hochul in New York, all the luminaries from the Democratic Party trying to lift him up. He is now the next senator from the U.S., from the state of Pennsylvania for the U.S. Senate.
He made his name as the mayor of Braddock, a very small town. There was a lot of divided response to how good a job he did as the mayor of Braddock. There were a lot of shuttered storefronts in Braddock, and the population dropped dramatically in that town over the course of those years. And, we were talking about it before we announced this, but I think we're going to continue to revisit the fact that there was very little public interface of these candidates. He had a stroke, obviously, that was very evident in that debate. And as Dana pointed out, people had been voting for over a month before they ever got a chance to see John Fetterman on stage. But, after that, there was this sort of rally around, support him, bolster him. Everyone in the country, I think, was sympathetic to what they saw that night in the debate. Obviously, he was struggling with his recovery from his stroke, and he has continued to say he's going to continue to get better, and he expects that he will be fine by January, was one of the things that he said a lot. This is the first pickup of the night. This is a very, very significant outcome, and that it comes down to Pennsylvania, I think, is a very is a stunning outcome.
It is stunning. Ben Dominance, your thoughts?
I just think that more and more this looks like a night that ends up inevitably sending us back to Georgia. I feel like that's where we're going to end up. And now, obviously, you have the problem for Republicans of playing in defense of their own territory in this situation and failing. The assumption was that they were going to be able to defend all of these seats with these retiring senators and be able to do so successfully. I think that this is a real shock to the system.
Kellyanne, if in this environment, in this set of policy issues, inflation, immigration, crime in a place like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, doesn't set the table for Republicans, what does? We know the map looks a lot better next time in 2024.
Yes.
But this is pretty stunning.
It's pretty stunning, and I don't think that John Fetterman in the United States Senate is going to bring anybody back to their wish fulfillment of having a more moderate centrist governing body in the upper chamber. I mean, his problem is not his health. I hope he lives another 50 years, God bless him. His problem is that he's against fracking in an energy-rich state. But that was said many times. The problem is that he looked into a camera and said, quote, you can release up to 1/3 of all criminals and nobody would feel less safe. But that was said many times. So people know what they got here. The question is, how does that translate into a Washington that's already seen as broken and ineffective? But you're right, Brett. I can't think of a more straightforward, less complicated issue set that was more in favor of one party than this particular one. The big question, though, I still think is about Joe Biden for this reason. He was not welcome on the campaign trail. If he runs in 2024, he can't tell himself, don't campaign with me. I mean, he is going to be the leader of the party. And I think this is going to be a big reckoning in the Democratic Party for this reason. They can't turn it over to their vice president. They'd love to be able to say, let's turn it over to our first female vice president of color and tell Joe Biden, you made history by our ability to elevate her too. So I think they're a little stuck, and it may not feel that way tonight when Fetterman wins the Senate. I think they're a little stuck now. What happens? And if democracy was really on the ballot, then what did they tell America tomorrow? Did we fall apart? Did the world actually come to an end? They're on Shannon's show on Sunday. They're invoking Hitler and Stalin. It's disgrace. So I hope Joe Biden comes out and says, let's unify. It's a split country. It's a split Senate, and has something to say like that. But he has not shown the ability to do that yet.
But Mo, did that closing argument work? Did the threat to democracy move people? Did the abortion issue move people?
Move some people, right? And
in Pennsylvania.
It moves some people in Pennsylvania, right? I think that both parties identified who their voters were in this election and went after them. I don't think you saw a huge effort, with some exceptions, right, to actually try to pull people over to your side. I think the Republican focus on inflation and on crime was designed to do that. And I think that the Democratic message on a woman's right to choose also was intended to try to do that. Both two messages that could appeal to the middle. But for the most part, both sides doubled down on their base. That's what this was. And both sides had some success doing that. You've got two very fired up, angry bases in this country right now. And I don't see that dynamic changing anytime soon.
All right, so you see on the corner there, that's the balance of power, 48-48. We have now 4 white little blocks, if we can pull that full screen. And there is still a path, but is much narrower for Republicans. Bill Hemmer, we have Georgia, we have Nevada, Arizona, and Wisconsin. Wisconsin looks like it's getting baked a little bit.
Want to take a swim around over here?
that'd be
Okay,
good.
real quick here. Just watching Michigan, okay? Most expensive House race out there in this current cycle. And the Republicans hanging on right now. It's gotten a little closer here. We just had a major, we had a lot of vote come in a moment ago, so we're right around 80% in that Lansing area here. And Barrett's still hanging on. Let me pop over here to just north of there in Michigan. Dan Kilde's the Democrat against Paul Young here. And so still real close, but Kilde's taking a slight lead here. We do expect John James, he's run for statewide office twice. He looks to be in a decent position right now, just east of Detroit here, but just about a third of the vote in. Let's go to, we were talking about Wisconsin a moment before, and we were suggesting whether or not, let me go to the Senate side here, as to whether or not Mandela Barnes can catch Ron Johnson. I guess it's possible, right? 1.5 right here. If you think about Milwaukee, and you think about, that's, come on here, let's go. Hope the batteries are still working. You're at 88%, so a few more votes in here. Is that enough to catch him? I think we can debate it, right? I mean, Johnson's still up 1.5 points right now in Wisconsin. A few House districts I'm watching here, guys. This is, let me just backtrack in time here a little bit. The Suffolk County went red for the Democrat here. This will be, if it holds up, this will be a flip for Republicans. Interesting race here. North Shore, Long Island, just outside the borough of Queens. George Santos against Robert Zimmerman, two openly gay candidates running in an open seat. That's the seat that Tom Suozzi had. He vacated to run for governor, lost terribly in the primary to Kathleen Hochul, so he had to resign that position there. That would be a pickup if it holds there. On the South Shore of Long Island, let's just see where this is. All right, so Desposito, the Republican, this would be a pickup also, the Republican Party out on Long Island. Come in here a little bit here. Let's go Hudson Valley. Sean Patrick Maloney, how's this race shaping up? Looks like Mike Lawler's going to win this race. You got 94% of the vote in. This is a big pickup for Republicans. Sean Patrick Maloney was a big target on behalf of the GOP. If you give me a moment here, I'll just try and see if there's others here. This is Rochester. This is LaRon Singletary. He had a lead. He lost it. So it looks like his bid, perhaps, to win that seat in Rochester will come up short against Joe Morelli. So, dealer's choice. Shall we check Nevada? Here we go. All right, so 3 major House races in Nevada. All 3 said to be considered toss-ups, 1, 3, and 4. All of them have a slice of Las Vegas in them. Democrats did something very interesting. They went into Las Vegas and they sort of took their voters, they've done this in a few other states, based on the census and spread them out this district and that district and this district, trying to increase their chances to hold on to all 3. Well, they were considered toss-ups, but no real clear answer as to whether or not Republicans will flip any of those 3 just yet. Here is the Senate race now in Nevada. Okay, Laxalt trailing Cortez Masto by a good 11 points, about a little more than 1/3 of the vote there in Nevada. Let me come back to the House race here in Nevada. I'm very curious about this. One is Vegas. It used to be all Vegas, really. It was plus 22 Democrat. Nina Titus holding on right now against Robertson. Let me come down here and let's go to 3, which runs just south of Las Vegas here. Susie Lee hanging on against April Becker as well. So Becker trying to flip that seat. It's still somewhat early, though, but right now the Democrat is hanging on there.
So we're getting told by Chad Pergram,
yes, please,
that Leader McCarthy was expected to speak tonight, but he is not going to speak until the House is called. And they are suggesting that the House may not be called tonight.
Well, if I look at this in northeastern PA, I mean, there's a reason why, Brett. Lisa Scheller is doing her best to try and catch up to Susan Wild. She hasn't gotten there yet. That's in PA 7 right over here, just north of there in PA 8. Cartwright and Bognet. The Republican, have yet to get, it's a rematch again of 2020, just like in 7 here from 2 years ago, excuse me there. But Cartwright, the Democrat, is hanging on. I know that the Republicans really thought that they had a real good chance of taking those seats back in northeastern PA. And it was largely thought if you flip one, you flip the other. It's almost a package deal. But so far, what I'm not seeing in Pennsylvania, with the Fetterman call there, that's Pittsburgh. It's Summer Lee here. And this is 17, Connor Lamb's old seat, Democrat. It appears that Democrats will not flip a single seat in Pennsylvania.
Republicans.
Sorry. It appears that Republicans will not flip a single seat.
That is a major Democrat
Pennsylvania.
night in Pennsylvania.
Go to Connecticut 5, please.
Okay, so Connecticut 5 is the west side of Connecticut. This is George Logan. This was a seat that they could... it'll be here, trust me. Just do it one more time here. So George Logan against Johanna Hayes. What do you see here, Carl? I see a close race. He was down earlier. He's come back. There's still a bit of a vote out there. What do you see?
I think that's behind the real count by about, I think he's up now by maybe as much as 10,000 votes.
Oh, wow.
Okay, is it about a point and a half? Thereabouts?
So, Carl, as we're going race to race here, I mean, are we looking at a 219 majority?
No.
We're looking north of 220?
North of 220. Yeah.
But you're looking
north of 225.
So you're looking at a 10?
Oh,
10?
more than.
Give it to me.
Yeah, more than that.
Oh, okay. Because you're at 2. Okay.
Yeah. I'm approaching 20.
As the race is still out there, yeah.
Yeah, we pick up, we know
4 seats in New York, it looks like.
Well, and we picked up 4 seats in Florida. We picked up a seat in Texas right there, the 15th.
15.
What about California? Like 47 and 49.
And then we picked up a couple of seats in Michigan. We lost one, but picked up, I think, 2 or maybe 3.
Okay, can we turn to the Senate real quick?
Yeah.
Just go to the Senate maps. You don't have to do what if,
but just the numbers we have on Connecticut 5. All this matters, folks. I really, right? All this matters.
Well, every single one.
Yeah, and Connecticut 5 right now, the number is 50.8 for Hayes and 49.2 for Logan. That's 0.3 of a point there. Go ahead, Brett. What's your question?
Just to go to the Senate map of what's left out there.
Nevada, Arizona, Alaska, Georgia, and Wisconsin.
Alaska's going to be a Republican. We know that.
You want to do a what if? Is that what you're saying?
No, I just want to say, what's the path? Let's say they hold Wisconsin.
Yep.
Are we back to Georgia again? Is this what we're
probably? Yeah. I mean, you can crunch this a number of different ways here. If you want to do the what if, I think it's the best way we can show the audience what we think is going on out there. And right now,
by the way, we should point out the vote in Arizona, the vote's pretty good for Democrats in Arizona right now.
Right, and in Nevada as well.
Yep. So you're at 49-49, right? So if the Democrat hangs on in Nevada, you're at 50-49. You go to a recount in Georgia, and all your chips are on Herschel Walker.
To get back to status quo.
Back to the status quo that we all started the night with, and Kamala Harris is still the tiebreaker in the U.S. Senate.
Yep. But if they pull off Nevada,
okay. If you come back here, I'll show you where it stands right now.
And then
a second here.
Georgia gives you.
And then you go to the runoff. You would, and if Walker, shoot.
At least we got shoot. That's good.
That's twice.
111.
You see it all over again.
Yeah.
No, we get it. We get it.
I'm not going to. But here is Nevada right now, just to update you. You're at 35% of the vote. Cortez Masto has a lead by about, 11 points there in Nevada.
What's happening there in Nevada?
Well, this is Clark County.
Clark County is coming in and not much else. You've got 60. I'm looking at 60% of Clark County in, and she's up by 11 points. But there's nothing in Washoe, and then the rurals. You're only seeing a little bit out of the rurals, but the rurals. Let me just give you an example. There's a county called Nye. Trump took it last time around with 60% of the vote. This time around, Laxalt is taking it with 60% of the vote, but the turnout is 83% of what it was in the presidential election. That is to say, it's very large. And those rural counties, when they come in, right now she's up by, in what I'm seeing, she's up by 49,000 without the rurals coming in. When the rurals come roaring in, there's going to be a growth of the Republican vote by 50 to 60,000 votes. And then it's going to come down to...
Is that enough to offset what you're seeing in Clark County, where 60% live?
Yeah. Well, 60% of the vote is in Clark County. And the numbers that I'm looking at.
You're thinking Laxalt can catch her?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Because he's going to win Washoe. And Washoe is the second largest county in the state. And then you take the 15 rurals, as they call them, and they're going to be strong as an acre of garlic.
You know what?
Let's take a look at
An acre of garlic is very strong.
Gilroy, California.
Let's take a look at Arizona.
Senate,
Governor and Senate.
So you're 50% in, and Kelly's got a comfortable lead. It looks pretty strong for him, right? Governor Hobbs still hanging on right now, but Kari Lake has gained a little bit since the last time we checked. Maricopa County counts for about 60% of the vote, similar to Clark County. And Hobbs has a comfortable lead there, right, by 17 points. What's going on here in Pima County? In Tucson, Hobbs leading again about 2-1 over Kari Lake.
And this is way outperforming where polls had this one.
I think you're dead right about that, Brett.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is, Carl?
Look, polling is broken. Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah.
But we had a golden era of polling when we all had landlines and we answered them now. Anybody here got a landline you answer? I got one because when you ring my doorbell, my phone rings. But that's the only time I answer it. And conducting polls is more difficult, a lot more expensive. And then there are a lot of people who have little black boxes and magic ways of doing polling that they sell to the media and complicate our lives. But,
Mo, this is another race where the Democrats said no to debates in the governor's race in Arizona. No, none, zero.
Yeah.
You think it's working for them? It's working.
It's terrible for democracy. Right? I was critical of the Democrats who said no. I was critical of the Republicans who said no. It's terrible for democracy. But they're not paying a political price for it, is the point. I keep hearing people talk about how this could be deja vu and come back down to Georgia. Next time Bill looks at that Georgia map, this may not come to a runoff, right? Warnock is inching closer and closer to 50% as the night goes on. I'm getting a lot of messages from smart Democrats who are beginning to think that all this talk about a runoff may be for naught, that Warnock may win this thing outright.
Here's the problem.
If that's the case, then Nevada is the ball game.
Yeah, let me just show you this, Mo, because this is a new number for me in Gwinnett County. You're at 99% of the estimated vote. Remember the last time we looked at that? It was around 80%. A lot of folks live here, right? This is DeKalb County. They're at 99%. You know what Georgia's doing? Georgia's counting fast. Than what they did, right? This is Cobb County here, just to finish the argument. You're at 99% of the estimated vote. Mo, maybe you might be right here, but
go to Columbia.
It just seems as if those big counties have pretty much accounted for
Bill,
their
I want to interrupt you. Sorry, buddy. Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman is up on the stage. We want to listen in as he accepts the victory in Pennsylvania to be the next U.S. Senator.
I'm not really sure what to say right now. My goodness. So I'm so humbled. Thank you so much, really. Thank you. Thank you. Like what is it? It's like 1:30 in the morning and you're still here hanging in? We launched this campaign almost 2 years ago. And we had our slogan. It's on every one of those signs right now. Every county, every vote. Every county, every vote. And that's exactly what happened. We jammed them up. We held the line. I never expected that we were going to turn these red counties blue, but we did what we needed to do, and we had that conversation across every one of those counties. And tonight, that's why I'll be the next U.S. Senator from Pennsylvania. Thanks to all of you. All of you. Thank you. Thank you so much. It means I want to thank, of course, all these supporters, all across Pennsylvania, all in this room, all across the nation, everyone that chipped in $10 to help us get here. Thank you. And also I also really want to thank my family. My mother, my father, Carl, Susan, my brother Greg. Where's Giselle? Where's Giselle? Everyone's favorite, yeah, Giselle. Who 6 months ago she saved my life. Walking out of a Sheetz bathroom, she recognized what was happening. And also, and my children, Carl, Grace, August, hey, So everyone, and just thank you. And I also want to thank my team as well, the best team. So many names, Brendan, my campaign manager, Rebecca, Bobby, Joe, Jason, everybody, all my team. So many that made that part of it. And also thank all of the supporters. Also, I'm just so proud of the race that we ran. And this campaign has always been about fighting for everyone who's ever been knocked down that ever got back up. This race is for the future of every community all across Pennsylvania. For every small town or person that ever felt left behind, for every job that was ever been lost, for every factory that was ever closed, for every person that works hard but never ever get ahead. I'm proud of what we ran on. Protecting a woman's right to choose, raising our minimum wage, fighting the union way of life. Healthcare is a fundamental human right. It saved my life, and it should all be there for you when you ever should need it. Standing up to corporate greed, making more things right here in America and right here in Pennsylvania, and standing up for our democracy. 20 years ago, I came to Braddock to start a GED program, and I've spent these last 2 decades fighting for the forgotten communities, because no community deserves to be left behind. No one deserves to be abandoned, and every place matters. And I want to thank all of you amazing supporters, all of you, and all watching and every. We bet on the people of Pennsylvania, and you didn't let us down. And my promise to all of you is I will never let you down. Thank you, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much.
John Fetterman is a winner in Pennsylvania in the Senate race tonight. What a story that has been throughout the course of all of this. I remember it was Selena Zito early on who was going to his rallies and basically wrote a piece saying he's having a really hard time out there on stage.
Just think about this. We welcome back Mark Thiessen and Harold Ford Jr. to the panel. We talked a lot about debates and when some candidates did debates and some didn't do them. Had the October 25th debate been September 30th, would this race have changed? Mark?
I think it might have, or maybe it wouldn't have. I mean, I think there's a broader issue here, which is that, so think about this. We have the worst inflation in 4 decades, the worst collapse in real wages in 40 years, the worst crime wave since the 1990s, the worst border crisis in U.S. history. We have Joe Biden, who is the least popular president since Harry Truman, since presidential polling happened, and there wasn't a red wave. That is a searing indictment of the Republican Party. That is a searing indictment of the message that we have been sending to the voters. They looked at all of that and said, and looked at the Republican alternative and said, no thanks. The Republican Party needs to do a really deep introspection look in the mirror right now, because this is an absolute disaster for the Republican Party, and we need to turn back. We need to look at who won today. Ron DeSantis, DeWine, these governors, Kemp. Abbott. You know, look at these governors. This is the path to the future. At electing these radical candidates who ran far behind them has put the Republican Party in a terrible position, and voters have have indicted the Republican Party.
Harold Ford Jr., you don't have to pretend like you're on the 5 and dealing with Greg Gutfeld and Jesse and everybody else. But let me just say, this night turned out a lot different than a lot of people thought.
It's probably not the story that a lot of people thought would be told tonight. But I hope that the Democrats don't take the wrong lessons from this side. I said on the 5 and on your show, Brett, that both parties need to take the right lessons. And I think Mark has laid out at least the predicate for the lesson for Republicans. Democrats have to understand that as much as people may have thought that we may be to blame for some of the things that have been talked about, they didn't want to entrust the Republicans with fixing it totally. They want us to come together and fix it. If these numbers, 219, 220, 221, whatever the House may come out as, I think Democrats, you know, it's Georgia and Nevada. As we sit here, I listen to Carl talk about Nevada. I see it a little differently. I think that the senator could very well be reelected tonight, but who knows? What I think the lesson is, work together. We have real problems in the country, and the country wants them to come together on crime, on border security, on energy security, and figure out real answers.
Well, I want to go deep into this, but we want to take a break real quick because we're waiting on Leader McCarthy, who now is going to speak tonight. And we hear it's going to be fairly quickly. But I do want to talk on the other side of the break about the way forward.
And the candidate question as well is worth follow-up. So let's talk. We'll wait for Kevin McCarthy. He's coming up in just a few moments. We'll sneak in a quick break. We'll be right back. Happened in South Texas. And Bill, take us through some of these, because I think a lot of our viewers have become familiar with a number of these candidates.
3 big races here. Let me just back out one moment here, guys, show you that we've been watching here. Down on the border, they've all been called right now. 2 won by the Democrats, 1 picked up by the Republicans, which is at pickup here. And that's that long, skinny little strip you see. That's Texas 15, Monica De La Cruz, 8-9-point winner there over Michelle Vallejo. This is Henry Cuellar's district. He's the last pro-life Democrat in Congress. He was in a real tough primary fight. He beat a progressive candidate to go on and battle tonight against Cassie Garcia. There was a lot of optimism on behalf of Republicans that they could take that seat. Unsuccessful in Texas 28 tonight. Come down here along Galveston Road. This is Texas 34. Mayra Flores, born in Mexico, won a special election just about 3 months ago, taken down by Vicente Gonzalez tonight, however, down here along the Galveston shore.
Bill, that's not Galveston. That's Corpus Christi.
Corpus Christi. I'm sorry,
Gulf of Mexico.
Carl. You know it better than anyone. You're exactly right about that. I apologize, but thank you for that correction. What I find, think about how many stories we've done on the border, right? Been 2 years. How many people crossed that border this past year? Was it 2 million? Yep. Right. So this is McAllen crossing, right, Carl? And Laredo should be right over here in this district. And that's where we've had reporters time after time and day after day. And I'm not quite sure what to say, Carl, other than immigration, apparently, for those voters in that part of Texas was not enough to seal the deal for them to cross over and vote for Republicans.
Well, that's right for Congress, but what you're missing off of that map is, for the first time in the history of Texas, the Republicans have elected apparently a state senator from the Rio Grande Valley, and have also picked up one state house seat. Ryan Guillen, a Hispanic Democrat, switched parties, and tonight won re-election by carrying Starr County with 70% of the vote. And we also elected an additional Republican state representative, a Latina from Brownsville, basically the southern end of that blue district along the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay. Can I ask you this? Let's go back 3-4 hours, right? Let's go back to Florida, Miami-Dade. This is Ron DeSantis. Feels like days ago, right? Okay, Miami-Dade, DeSantis was a winner. Rubio was as well up here in Palm Beach County. But more so down here in Miami-Dade, Carl. Is it Cuban-American? Is it Hispanic? You know, how are we to judge how the Republicans are doing now with Latinos after this vote tonight?
Look, there are several different Hispanic populations. Yep. And so the Cuban Americans who've been traditionally Republican became more Republican in the last several years in South Florida. And they were joined by the Central Americans and the South Americans, Colombians, Venezuelans, Nicaraguans, Hondurans, Guatemalans. They all became Republican in Florida. In South Texas, the Tejanos, the Mexican Americans, are moving into the Republican Party. Not only did they vote for local Republicans, but they also voted very strongly for the governor. The governor carried one of the counties down there. You've actually been in that county when you went bird hunting, and did really well in the 3 populated counties, Cameron, Hidalgo, and Webb.
But there was hope that they could win all 3 of those seats.
Yeah, well, there was real hope about 2 of them.
Yeah.
But Mayra Flores won a special election in a district different than the one that she then ran in.
That hadn't been won by a Republican in decades.
In over a century.
100 years.
Yeah, since the 1870s.
I'm going to make a call here, and we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back. Fox News can now project that Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers, the Democratic incumbent, has defeated GOP challenger Tim Michels. With this win, Evers takes a second term in office. This was a close race. Republicans really thought the businessman Michels could take out the incumbent governor. This is one of the reasons why we haven't called the Senate race there. The gap between Ron Johnson and Mandela Barnes, the lieutenant governor, continues to narrow. Johnson's still up. They're looking at different vote areas. But the Wisconsin governor is going to stay in Democratic hands. And the Wisconsin Senate, for us, we cannot call as of yet. But we may have some more calls on the other side of this break. So keep it here.
We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Decision Desk Democracy 2022. We're calling it a lot of things because it's 1:37.
It's a little late. We're getting a little tongue-tied. I'd like to just get the thoughts from some of the other folks on the panel about what Mark said about the reevaluation. What are the takeaways from what we know so far tonight? And you think about some of these Senate races. Kellyanne, I'll go to you first on this, if I may. And I think about, Dave McCormick, or I think about Sununu, who people wanted to run in New Hampshire. You think about Ducey, who people wanted to run in Arizona. I think there's going to be a reevaluation, as Mark says.
Well, if that's what he meant by it, I would reevaluate the Republican.
He was nodding. I think that was
I'm agreeing.
But by the way, I think there were many first-time candidates, particularly at the House level, who I would encourage to run again. Yeah. Some of these folks who are first generation, veterans, candidates of color, females, I love that they ran. And they really did run on the same issue set all across the country. So if it came up short as a national trend, that's one thing. But I don't want people who showed the courage to put their name on a ballot to lose heart, because so many of those people do win the second and third time. Yep. Now, you named some candidates that I was for in the primaries, but that aside, I also would just reevaluate, and some people aren't going to like this, and I'm not going to start caring tonight at 1:40 a.m. I don't really care for many people in the Republican consultancy. I call it staph infection. I have no sour grapes. I have no jealousy of any of them. I achieved something none of them have. But I worry about people who will run around. They blame the candidates. In the Republican Party, consultants always win, candidates often lose, is what I like to say. They're a walking RICO violation. They make sure one of them gets on the gravy train, and they bring the whole team on. And I think some of these first-time candidates, for whatever their flaws, do start to believe, people they're paying tens of millions of dollars to, Martha, that they can help them win, that they're going to win. And so, sure, you've got to start at the top. Candidate quality matters. And I think people could have done a better job in their campaigns, no doubt. But I also think that that we have to reevaluate that. The other thing I would say is, if you are a Republican consultant, you're watching this from your couch, as you often do, counting your money, think about filling the bench and mentoring the next generation of consultants, of candidates. Start volunteering more. I want to see you in the bowels of a Crowne Plaza hotel all over this country, training people. That's the way that you build a party. We don't need to reevaluate and go back to the autopsy, I would hope, or a Romney candidacy, now the junior senator from Utah, to know who we are and where we're going. But I think that we should, as a party, figure out all the gifts that we have, because I'll tell you, I'd rather be a Republican tonight than a Democrat that's run by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that looked voters in the eye and said, crime is not real. Inflation is an invention by economists and pundits on TV. That parents don't have a right to say where their children go to school and what is taught there. That energy dependence and anti-fracking candidates are welcome. I would much rather be us than them. I think we're in a realignment time. I think that we're at a time where we are welcoming more people into the party as voters and as candidates.
Shannon, you saw some data that the crime issue really didn't bubble up.
I was surprised tonight when we got the final data crunch about what people said were their top issues. The economy and jobs, inflation, that whole thing was runaway #1 issue, but followed by abortion, immigration, and climate change. And as much as there has been talk about crime, and as much as it's been the subject of ads everywhere in all of these critical races, at least for the 100,000 or so people we talked to in our version of catching their attitudes and why and who they voted for, crime was not in the top, which was very surprising to me when this came in tonight. I will say, though, you've got 75% who say wrong direction for the country. You've got 78% who told us that they thought the nation's economy was not good or poor. Those are huge numbers. But then when we asked them, who do you blame? It was pretty split between the president and his policies, or there's nothing he can do about it. 50-50-ish.
There's another problem here that I think we have to address, which is that as much as we talk about how populism drives Republican waves, historically it has in 1994 and in 2010, I think a big problem that Republicans have to grapple with this time around is that as much as they could identify problems, I don't think that people trusted them to know what to do differently. You may identify the economy as being a problem, and inflation as being a problem, and crime as being a problem, but I don't think that they actually sold them on any kind of oppositional message. I think that maybe the takeaway that we can have this time around is that Republicans, essentially took their eye off that important ball, being able to direct voters towards something that they would actually do, that was tangible, that was realistic. It's easy to forget that the contract with America was mostly about internal reform of Congress, something that they guaranteed, we are going to vote on this, this list of things within the first, 100 days, we're going to deal with this, and I think that this is an election in which Republicans talked a lot about what the other side was getting wrong, but they never really connected with the voters about what they would do to solve the inflation problem.
I'll take you that and I'll raise you one, which is you're absolutely right. But when Kevin McCarthy announced his version of the contract with America, sitting right behind him in the camera view was Marjorie Taylor Greene. That was the image that the Republican Party presented. So they were, even when they tried to present their...
I don't think you can put this on the Marjorie Taylor Greene wing,
It's not one
though.
person. Look,
it's about more than that.
The Democrats' anti-MAGA strategy worked. All right? They went and they spent tens of millions of dollars to nominate MAGA candidates. And if you go down the list, Chuck Schumer bought ads to get Don Baldock elected. He lost. In Michigan, they tried to. John Gibbs was nominated thanks to the Democratic money over Peter Mayer, who voted to impeach Trump. Gibbs lost. In Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro spent $840,000 to boost Doug Mastriano, lost. In Maryland, Dan Cox, they did the same thing. He lost. Their entire strategy of doing that, and then painting the Republican Party as too extreme, is one of the reasons why they didn't even. Things were so bad that they still voted against the Republican. People still voted against the Republican Party.
You take all of that from this. I mean, what do you think Democrats take from this?
I think that we take from this the fact that the Republican Party actually did what they accuse us of doing, which is just yelling Trump, Trump, Trump all the time. And they just yelled Biden, Biden, Biden all the time. And the American public has been clear. His approval rating, it's ticked up a bit. It's not the best thing we ever saw. The country's on the wrong track. He's not managing things well. But it turns out that an election is about more than one individual, which is also what we saw in 2020 when Republicans picked up seats in the House, right, and got record numbers of women and minorities elected. And so that's definitely one of the messages that I'm taking from this. And to add on to what Mark is saying, and I was not supportive, by the way, of the strategy of funneling money.
And you said that many times. You said that many times.
Yeah, but there is still an extremist sheen on this party because of the continued influence of Donald Trump. The candidates that he picked in prominent races, we're seeing in Pennsylvania, obviously, we'll see what happens with Herschel Walker. I expect Warnock to win there, et cetera, are not palatable to moderate voters, to certainly conservative-leaning Democrats, people who might have been disenchanted with the party. And I think that the Republican Party needs to take a step back and say, okay, 2020 we lost the presidency over this, right? And did end up losing the Senate because of the runoffs, which he essentially told people not to go out and vote from his own party. And when you're looking ahead to 2024, think about the fact that he's teasing that he's going to announce that he's going to run again on November 15th or whatever day it is, and the implications of that for a party that is trying to move away from having a reputation of being this extreme. And Shannon, on the issue, abortion being number 2, this is something Mark and I got into it last week on your show, Martha, about it, where I said this is not an issue that has gone away. We're just not talking about it every day, right? Inflation is something that we need, the daily grind, right? Oh, did you go to the store today? Right. It's so expensive. That doesn't mean that we went home and weren't concerned about the fact that we were having rights stripped away from us. And Democrats were able to make that argument that it can start with abortion, it can go past that, that when you're looking at future generations, you're worried about what your daughters are. Remember in the Fox poll, the swing of dads, the 18-point swing, who were suddenly supporting Democrats because they don't want to send their daughters off to college in a conservative state and have to worry that she's not going to be able to get reproductive health care there.
I think that the abortion argument that abortion is what did this, that turned this election, is wrong. I mean, if you look at all the governors who signed abortion restrictions into law in Ohio, in Georgia, in New Hampshire, in Florida, in Texas, they all won by large margins. They're the winners tonight, are those governors. What is the difference? Is that they are actually implementing conservative reforms. They're doing what you said, giving answers to the problems of people's lives, offering alternatives. Why the big winner tonight is DeSantis. He is just as much a counterpuncher as Donald Trump. He goes after Disney. He sends people on planes to Martha's Vineyard. He does all that. But you know what else he does? He's got a reform agenda. And when he managed that crisis with that hurricane, people looked at that and said, he's a counterpuncher, but he's also a leader who can lead in a time of crisis.
All right, so we're waiting for Leader McCarthy to come out, and he, is expected to be Speaker because they expected with the redistricting alone to pick up the seats needed. The projection is narrowing. Carl's convinced that it'll be over the needed number, but it could be 219. A majority is 218. What does Leader McCarthy say tonight within the next 10 minutes?
I am looking forward to finding out because, I mean, they had a speech written, right? And it's not that they've done terribly. Like, I do think that the recruitment that Kevin McCarthy led to get over, I think, 60 people to run who were not white men or even white women, right? There was just a huge concerted effort to try to get new people to run. And for those that ran in House seats, I agree with Kellyanne. They should run again. As I remember George W. Bush said, he lost his first race, right? A lot of people lose their first race. You learn a lot. and you try on. Obama
did.
for the
Yes,
House.
he talked
primary.
on the campaign
Lost in the
trail.
primary.
That
There
is
you have
Bucky.
it. But I think that Kevin McCarthy is going to say, well, he's just going to have to deal with the reality that it is. He'll be in he'll likely be in the majority. We haven't made that call yet. But this is going to be a sticky wicket, as we say, on America's newsroom.
And you know what?
Because how he's going to govern will be difficult.
I think you're right. And I think he can make the point of the enormous effort that he made across the country to bring people into his party and to encourage people to run, women, Latinos, Hispanics, law enforcement, veterans, Navy nurses in Virginia. You know, people that they were very proud of and felt very good about. And you know, we all know how the House works. You know, you get elected and 15 minutes later you start working on the next campaign. So I think that he, you know, will probably, I expect he'll come out and say, obviously this isn't what we expected, but we've laid the groundwork for what we hope will be more
I think that also, you know, he's known Joe Biden and Kamala Harris for quite a long time. And so I don't think he won't take questions tonight, but you have to think ahead, like, how will he actually work with a Biden administration? How will Ron Klain decide to work with them? Is the White House going to feel emboldened to continue to do what they're doing? As the Biden people said today, well, he's got a veto pen. That's all he needs. So then the American people are like, well, we actually wanted to get stuff done.
Does Nancy Pelosi stick around? There's all kinds of questions. But we are going to hear from Leader McCarthy after this break. We're also going to take another spin on the what if board, and we're going to see where Wisconsin stands at this hour. I have some new information from there. Keep it here.
All right, we are back, and Bill and Brett are now at the board.
From McCarthy. I mean,
Bill and Brett.
Bill Brett board. No, it's still your board. I just want to come over here and tell you what the Johnson campaign is saying. This is why they're saying that we should call this race. This is why they're saying that the votes are not there. They're looking into it. Here's the spread, 38,600 statewide. They are saying that the biggest stuff left is here in Milwaukee County, in Wauwatosa, 5 wards in Milwaukee County, and 11,600 votes total left there. They say Barnes, this is now a suburb, it's a different kind of district, the 5 wards, he's not going to get 100% of the 11,600. And they're saying the votes are just not left there.
So he gets 80%.
But the reason it keeps going down and narrowing, it could be a 20,000, 10,000 vote separation.
Hit that back arrow there, then hit that check mark at the top of the line there, okay?
Yeah.
So this is your outstanding.
Ooh, it's much more purple haze, purple rain.
Right. So, and what I see up here is a lot of rural votes that are still out.
Yeah.
That will likely favor Johnson. By how many, we don't know. There's several down here in the South as well that you could point to, and you could see this vote.
Right.
Breaking.
Yeah. All right. So
breaking 60-40 Johnson, and if that's the case, whether you're in Wauwatosa or not, you know, he would still hang on to that lead, however slim.
Okay, here we are. What if 48-48? Now let's just say, and by the way, Senator Johnson, we're told, is going to come out pretty soon and speak. We haven't called it yet, but let's say we're going to call it. Arizona seems like it's going bluish.
Yes, it does.
It feels that way. So then you're left with Nevada and Georgia. Where do you say?
And she had a lead here with about at the midway point.
And what's Nevada look like, Carl?
Pardon me?
Senate Nevada?
Yeah, look, way too early in Nevada, but she's not coming out. Yeah, she's not coming out of Clark County with a commanding lead. And Washoe County is this is going to be a long night here.
We don't expect to make this call tonight. Many hours is our projection.
She has a slight lead with about 40% of the vote reporting. So
that is 60% of Clark County. She's now 60% of Clark County, and she's up there 55-42, which is not exactly a commanding lead to come out of that. Nothing in Washoe. And only bits. I misspoke. It's not Nye County. It was Mineral County that I was referring to. You got 3 of the small counties reporting, one of them complete, and 2 of them incomplete.
So Right.
I mean, that's,
You
you
can't
can't
do
really
it.
do it. You can't do it. So there you are, 49-49. But even if, let's just say even if, that gets you to 50, and then this is, again, control of the U.S. Senate. But it relies on Nevada. And so then you wonder if Raphael Warnock can get to 50 and seal this deal. If he does that, then you are back to status quo with Kamala Harris.
What did you tell us a few hours ago? In Georgia, automatic recount at 0.5% or less?
0.5%.
So hit that home key there and come on out here to the Senate and go into Georgia and show where we are now. Okay, so you are 0.8%. So there's no automatic recount right now if this race were to end right now and you were to conclude it, okay? So hit that top check mark there in that line, okay? So this is the outstanding, it's hard to see now, isn't it?
It is.
Because there's so many votes in. I mean, there's a little pink in Columbia. There's a little pink up here near the border of North Carolina. This county always, I don't know what's going on. They take the check mark off, and then let's go in and see what that's Peach County, Georgia.
Peach County, Georgia.
As it should be.
57.
So if you go to president right there and watch this margin here, so Trump was just about 52%, a little shy. Now go back to Senate there.
Well, this is fun.
Yeah, right on. So I've been doing it for like 9 hours.
Can we all get up and play?
Walker's outperforming on a percentage basis what Trump did 2 years ago. I thought, okay, so he's hanging in there. I mean, this is why.
But is there enough vote there? Is there enough vote in Peach County to close the gap? No.
This is why we call them too close to call.
I think we have Kevin McCarthy coming to the stage, and we should probably head there because this will be interesting.
I know it's a late night, but first I want to start by thanking every single candidate and their families for running. I also want to thank the staff and the volunteers across this country that supported this movement. Thank you to everyone who voted Republican for the very first time. And I want to thank the millions of supporters across this country. You know, 2 years ago when I became leader, Republicans had less than 200 seats in the House. That cycle, we picked up 14 seats when every single person said that would be impossible. If you believe in freedom, hard work, and the American dream, these results proved that there is a place for you in the Republican Party. Now tonight, we built upon those gains 2 years ago, and it is clear that we are going to take the House back. In New York, we defeated the Democrat campaign chairman, Sean Patrick Maloney. Sean Patrick Maloney, which will be the first time in over 40 years the DCCC chair lost his re-election. Not only that, but on Long Island, Anthony D'Esposito won a seat that Joe Biden carried by 17 points. We are on the verge of historic gains in New York. In Florida, we gained 4 seats alone. We are poised to sweep the entire state of Iowa. And I will tell you, from the southern border of Monica de la Cruz to Virginia Beach, of Jen Kiggins, to Detroit with John James, and to Houston with Wesley Hunt, we are expanding this party. Now, let me tell you, you're out late. But when you wake up tomorrow, we will be in the majority, and Nancy Pelosi will be in the minority. Yeah. The American people are ready for a majority that will offer a new direction, that will put America back on track. Republicans are ready to deliver it. It's a new direction towards an economy that is strong, where you can fill up your tank, feed your family, where your paychecks grow and not shrink. A new direction towards a nation that is safe, where communities are protected, law enforcement is respected, and criminals are prosecuted. A new direction towards a future that's built on freedom, where children come first and are taught to dream big. And a new direction towards a government that is accountable, where government works for you instead of against you. Republicans will work with anyone who's willing to join us to deliver this new direction that Americans have demanded. But there's no time to waste. Our work begins now. Let's get America back on track. Thank you, God bless, and good night.
We're going to come out of this speech. We're going to say a couple things.
Okay, Kevin McCarthy saying that he believes he will become the majority leader. Obviously, he worked very hard to bring candidates out all across the country, you know, sort of getting them all ready for this race. Very diverse group of candidates. Not the night that he had hoped for, certainly not. But he claims that he will have a majority. We're still waiting for those numbers to all come in. You can see them there on the board. Republicans are at 193 right now. Democrats at 163. He says that he will lead a party that can bring people together.
He says he's going to be Speaker. He says that Pelosi is either going to be Minority Leader or leave Congress. But, you know, talking to Republicans in the House circles, they thought 10 or fewer was a bad night. They thought 15 to 25 was a good night. They thought 25 to 35 was a great night, and 35 plus was going to be the tsunami red wave. And they didn't think that 35 plus was out of the ballpark.
Wow.
It's probably going to be 10 or less. It could be 219. It takes 218 to control a majority of the House. And, you know, you have some races out there in Alaska, for example, that could go to the Democrats. There's an interesting...
Yeah, and it's interesting scenario. So if you have Republicans with a one-seat majority, what if? And you have a Senate with a one-seat majority, or it's even, and the tiebreaker comes from the vice president, you have a very interesting situation where you may have some gravity to try to pull people together on things in the middle. So we'll see what...
You also probably have a recruiting effort to try to get some people to cross over. I mean, one seat is pretty tenuous. Let's get some final thoughts from everybody here on the panel. Shannon, let me start with you. Your thoughts on this night and what we take away from it.
So if he ends up as Speaker, he has now got to do, as Speaker Pelosi has been doing, get all the different forces together, like the squad. He's going to have people that are immediately already calling for impeachments and all kinds of investigations. He's going to have to manage that. The Senate, if it remains tied, is a huge win when you look at what I love to cover, the judiciary, the Supreme Court. If there's another open seat, it makes all the difference in the world to those judicial confirmations.
Mark.
One vote majority in the House is the end of the spending spree. So, you know, the reality is why one vote by the hair of our nose, Republicans have managed to stop the $1 trillion Democrats only filibuster-free spending spree. But now that gives us a breather. Now we can stop some of the radical stuff on the Biden agenda and really take some time to look at why this night didn't go the way everybody expected it to. Who did well tonight? Who did poorly tonight? Why did that happen? And we do need an autopsy, not like the one after Romney, not after one that says we should be more leftist or, you know, on immigration or whatever. But we do need an autopsy because there's a corpse.
Well, how about this? Is McCarthy in trouble leadership-wise in any way, shape, or form?
Well, you know, the interesting thing is that I mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene sitting behind him before. She's a very powerful person now with a one-seat majority. Yeah. He's going to be depending on her and a lot of these people, and that worries me about the direction of the Republican caucus because he doesn't have any cushion in his side. It's different in the House than in the Senate, where two senators can hold things up. She can't. But
Jessica,
if we thought we were polarized before, we're even more polarized than we conceived was possible at this point. I mean, if you look historically, midterms are an opportunity for there to be some balance brought to the table. It doesn't look like that's really happening here. Certainly, if it turns into that razor-thin majority with just one seat. People are dug in. We talk all the time about independent voters. Oh, they're swing voters. People have issues that push them to one side or another, and identifying those issues out of this will be very interesting.
Kellyanne.
By and large, voters, when they were choosing their chief executives, by and large stuck with what they already had. unless it was an open seat, and then so that's something. But I think a majority is a majority, and it's disappointing in terms of the margins tonight. Perhaps there were some surprises, but we're going to pick up some House seats in some blue areas in some blue states. The most important part, when you have the majority, whether it's one or more, you get the gavels back, you get the chairmanships, you get the staff committees, and yes, you get to be Speaker and House Majority Leader and everything that comes with that. Kevin McCarthy tasted this several years ago and lost the speakership. Yeah. He withdrew himself. I think he's been preparing for this moment ever since. We'll see if he has a challenge. But I'd rather win narrowly than have 2 more years of what we've seen. I predict a lot of House Democratic retirements coming up. They're not going to want to run with Biden. They're not going to want to serve in the minority.
And does this change November 15th at Mar-a-Lago at all?
I don't know. I'm going to be here. I don't think it changes the America First policy agenda. And by that, I mean, Brett, that we are still going to be a party that talks about energy independence and Putin not in Ukraine and us helping Ukraine, and a sound economy that works for job creators, job seekers, and job holders. That's the vast majority of American households are job holders. So that agenda is not going to go away. And I think you saw it on the ballot tonight do pretty well, particularly in the big states.
Carl.
One of the supreme ironies is that if you add up the number of seats in which Republicans are now leading in the rest of the country that have not yet been called by somebody, it gets you to about 222, which is exactly what the Democrats have today.
So
we're likely
4-seat majority.
A 5-seat majority.
5-seat majority.
Yeah. So we're likely to find ourselves in a place where we are governing the House narrowly from the Republican side, just like the Democrats have. The difference is that we're not going to be out there trying to transform America by passing legislation that can be signed by the President of the United States.
Dan?
I would just say, for both sides, you'll have friends who cannot possibly believe that anybody that has any sense would ever vote for a Democrat. And you'll have Democrats who say, I cannot believe that anybody who has any sort of moral compass would ever vote for a Republican. And the two sides are like so far apart. So I would just hope everyone has a little bit of grace, understanding, and maybe just look and try to read a little bit more into these results to see what people are really thinking, because America does feel like there is no order, a line that Bill Hemmer has coined on Newsroom. Ben?
2 concepts. I think voters want a more populist, conservative agenda, as Kellyanne indicated. But I also think that they're tired of chaos. I think that they want normalcy. And I think that a lot of these candidates seemed more chaotic than normal. And I think that hurt Republicans in a major way all across the country.
Bill Hemmer, great job on the board today.
Yeah, fantastic, Bill. Really great.
Great job.
The batteries are still working, so you guys got a
But
minute
we're
on
going to
it.
stop, right?
He's going to charge overnight.
Final thought.
I think what you're seeing in Wisconsin will hold up. I don't have any reason to think that it would not. Georgia is a coin toss.
Okay.
Really is. It has been a pleasure covering this election once again with you and with all of you. I think that this was a surprise, and a lot of people are going to be surprised. We're going to take some time to digest it before we start focusing on the 2024 election. Brit Hume is still talking about it.
We'll take at least 30 seconds, and I guarantee that the 2024 conversation will begin soon. But I also think tomorrow morning we're going to have a little bit more clarity on some of these races that Carl talked about, and we'll see where we are. And this is the process that Americans do. I was always inspired to see people go out on Election Day, as always. And I think it's going to be an interesting moment to figure out where the country's headed.
This is how this country works.
Absolutely.
When it works. It's been a pleasure to have you alongside us at home. We are going to continue our coverage here on Fox News Channel with Trace Gallagher in Washington as Democracy 2022 continues. We hand the baton to you, sir.
Brett, Martha,
you,
your
Trace.
team, exceptional work as always. We are going to keep digesting this as the morning goes on. Thank you. Good evening to some, good morning to others, and welcome to our special coverage of the 2022 midterm elections. I'm Trace Gallagher in Washington, D.C. Well, you've heard the conversation, right? The conversation is, it appears the Republicans are still on path to gain control of the House. You heard Kevin McCarthy talking about, but the numbers are very much in question. There you can see kind of where we stand right now. As for the Senate remains a jump ball tonight with plenty of races yet to be called. You can see those 4 white boxes. Those are the races yet to be called. We hope to call at least one, maybe all of them over the next couple of hours. It is just after 11 p.m. on the West Coast, 2 a.m. here in the nation's capital, or just after. And while there was a red shift, the red wave never quite materialized. But we have Team Fox coverage. Christina Coleman is in Los Angeles tracking what's happening out west. Anita Vogel is sampling GOP reaction to tonight's results. But we begin with Kevin Corke monitoring election night. Big news and bad news for the Democrats. Kevin, good evening.
Evening, Trace. While we continue to await the final tallies, in particular from some of those major races out west, here in the East, there are quite a few surprises to tell you about so far. We begin in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, where despite a shocking performance in the lone debate of that race, John Fetterman has outpointed Dr. Oz to win the Senate seat, flipping a red seat in the Keystone State to blue, and in the process giving the Democrats fresh optimism that the balance of power in the Senate could in fact remain in their hands. As you see, 49.9 to 47.7. Elsewhere, we stay in the East. Let's take you up to the Granite State of New Hampshire. As you see, it's Hassan over the general. This is a bit of a surprise. The margin there, 54.1 to 43.9. I think there are a lot of people who felt like this actually could be a race to keep a very close eye on, but the Democrats do hang on there. Elsewhere, as we continue our look around the horn, as we like to say, we take it to the great state of Washington, the Evergreen State. Murray over Smiley. Smiley really seemed to campaign strongly, could not quite push the numbers up that hill. 57-43, a comfortable victory for the incumbent as Murray wins there. To Ohio is where we go next, and this is one a lot of people kept a very close eye on. J.D. Vance does come away with the victory, over 2 million votes in his column, besting Tim Ryan, 46.7% for him. That, of course, remains a red seat. How about the Old Dominion? Take it to Virginia. Spanberger. Wow, over Vega. This was one a lot of people called a bellwether matchup. Vega, by the way, has not conceded. We have seen her perform strongly, but right now she's still trailing. Staying in Virginia, you see Kiggins coming away with an important victory there, 52 to 48. That is indeed a pickup, as that race has been called for the Republican. And as we continue to unpack the results, Trace, I just want to point this out. There'll be a lot of attention paid over the next several days, not just to the tightly contested races, but also the difference mail-in balloting and early balloting may have played in the races, especially those here in the East, how that machinery may have played out and, in fact, paved the victory for so many races. In particular, we will keep an eye on what happened in Pennsylvania with John Fetterman. Meanwhile, over at the White House, the president, like a lot of us, watched it all unfold. But tonight he did take time to touch base with a few of the victors from his party. Let me take you to Twitter for this. He said, I just got off the phone with some of tonight's winners, including some folks I saw on the road this year. If you're in line to vote, remember to stay in line. Of course, he tweeted that earlier in the day. Among his congratulatory calls, Senator Chris Van Hollen, Senator Michael Bennet of the great state of Colorado, and J.B. Pritzker, a bit of a surprise winner, at least by margin, over in the land of Lincoln in Illinois. Trace?
Yeah. Kevin Corke, we'll get back to you in a bit. Thank you, sir. Let's hear about what Republicans are saying about tonight's results. Anita Vogel is live with us in studio. Anita, good evening.
Good evening, Trace. No question the GOP has quite a few victories to celebrate tonight so far, especially down in Florida. Epic victories for two big names. Not only was Governor Ron DeSantis easily reelected, but he becomes the first GOP governor to win the vote in very blue Miami-Dade County in 2 decades. The last GOP governor to do that was Jeb Bush back in 2002. In his victory speech, DeSantis credited his big win to standing up for freedom when leaders across the rest of the country were locking people down for COVID. He said, we've embraced freedom, we maintained law and order, and we protected the rights of parents, and we rejected the woke ideology. Another big winner, Republican Senator Marco Rubio, also cruised to victory in the Sunshine State, beating Congresswoman Val Demings. Rubio was outspent by Demings. He becomes the first Florida Republican to win 3 terms in the Senate. Also tonight, we heard from Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. He talked about how there would be a new day in Congress tomorrow and that he hoped we would wake up in a country where Nancy Pelosi was not the speaker. Also down in Florida, former President Trump has been holding court this evening at Mar-a-Lago, touting the candidates he endorsed and their wins tonight. Important to note, Ron DeSantis was not among them. He did not mention the name Ron DeSantis this evening. And of course, Trace, President Trump did tease the other night in Ohio that he will have more to say about his own future next week, November 15th to be exact. So we'll all be tuning in for that.
And Anita, we'll get back to you in moments. Thank you. Meantime, on the West Coast, it is just after 11 p.m. with a lot of races yet to be called and a lot of questions yet to be answered. Christina Coleman is live in the West Coast News Hub with more on this. Christina, good evening.
Hi, Trace. Yes, let's start off with Arizona's high-profile governor's race between Republican Kari Lake and Democrat Katie Hobbs. Early voting numbers show Hobbs in the lead, but this race is still too early to call. Numbers from rural counties are going to be pouring in, so a lot of people are waiting for that. And we also have so many other races that we are covering here. Also in Arizona, early voting numbers show Democrat Senator Mark Kelly leading against Trump-endorsed Republican Blake Masters, but that Senate race is also too early to call. In Colorado, the Fox News Decision Desk projected that Democratic Senator Michael Bennet will win his 3rd Senate term against Republican businessman Joe O'Dea. And in deep blue Oregon, there has not been a Republican governor for 40 years, but that could soon change. It's a nail-biter in that gubernatorial race between Democrat Tina Kotek and Republican Christine Drazan. That race too early to call. And in key battleground state Nevada, Democrat incumbent Governor Steve Sisolak has a lead over his Republican challenger, Clark County Sheriff Joe Lombardo. And in Nevada's Senate race, Democratic incumbent Catherine Cortez Masto has a lead over her GOP challenger, Adam Laxalt. Both of those races are too early to call. And lastly, here in Los Angeles, billionaire real estate developer Rick Caruso, a former Republican who is now registered as a Democrat, is trying to win the mayor's race here in Los Angeles in this deep blue state. He's in a tight race against former veteran Congresswoman Karen Bass. This race has gained a lot of national attention. Bass has gotten a lot of support from celebrities and national Democratic leaders, including Vice President Kamala Harris. She campaigned for Bass in Los Angeles yesterday afternoon. She said, quote, "There was so much about this race. Let's vote for Karen Bass for mayor. Let's restore our democracy." That race and many others on the West Coast are too early to call at this point. It's a lot to watch and keep track of, but of course, we will definitely do it.
Indeed, we'll get back to you when it happens. A lot happening on the West Coast. Christina Coleman live for us in L.A. Christina, thank you. Let's bring in Democratic strategist Kevin Walling and America's First Policy Institute Chief Communications Officer Mark Lauder. Gentlemen, welcome to you both. Before we kind of get into what they've been talking all night, like the autopsy, Mark Thiessen and so forth, I just want to mention a couple of the races there. We're talking a lot about, Christina talking a lot about Arizona and Nevada, because that's where a lot is hanging right now. And we're being told that about 50 to 60% of the vote is happening in Maricopa County and Clark County, the 2 biggest counties in those states. A lot still coming in, Mark, because Republicans are looking at this. They're behind in both, right? And they need some love. And we think there's going to be some votes coming down from Washoe County, some of the outlying counties in Nevada, and the same thing, Maricopa County, with only 6% counted, there's a lot of votes to be had there.
Yeah, I just looked at the numbers. We're about half of the votes in Washoe County as well, and that's going to be a county that obviously that you're going to expect to win on the Republican side. So the question is, are the numbers there? Are there enough out-state votes? And realizing that also Maricopa, you still have votes remaining there. So we really, it depends on where the votes are. Yeah. And it's too close to make that decision right now.
And he says where the votes are, Kevin, because, I mean, the truth is the Democrats had a much better night than was predicted. The polling was off a little bit in favor of Republicans against Democrats. And it looks right now in the early going, like in Arizona and Nevada, the Democrats have the edge. Whether they keep it, we don't know. But right now they have the edge.
Yeah, Trace, if you told me election night at 2 a.m. that Democrats would be gaining a Senate seat over the Republicans right now, and just down 4 House seats right now, I would have said that you're crazy based on all the predictions coming into this evening of a red wave that pivoted back in September and October, talk of 30, 40, 50 seats, 53 seats in the Senate, and that's just not materializing for Republicans. You just saw Leader Kevin McCarthy. He gave a really short speech, rah-rah. He didn't change much, I think, from what a concession speech would have looked like. And he was quickly off the stage.
When you say Senate's picked up a seat, that might be jumping the gun a little bit because we still have Georgia, which right now is too close to call. You have Raphael Warnock and Herschel Walker there. And again, at that thing, if neither one of those candidates gets over the 50% threshold, there will be a runoff on December 6th. So that could be a wait. It looks like Ron Johnson will hold his seat. We expect that call will come sometime in the next hour. So if Republicans pick up Ron Johnson, and they can pick up either Adam Laxalt in Nevada or Blake Masters in Arizona, and then it all comes back to Georgia.
It all comes back to Georgia. And then we got 4 more weeks of winter, in terms of Punxsutawney Phil and campaigning with, we've seen $250 million already spent on that Herschel Walker, Raphael Warnock race. We're going to see just as much of that in a really constellated amount of time down in the Peach State.
But did you expect it would be this close, Mark, at all?
No, I was thinking we'd be in the 52, 53 range, But the one thing I would say, and while I'm not going to predict this because it's too early to say, but if you were to get both Arizona and Nevada, then I think that changes the math in Georgia because then majority would already have been decided. Turnout model is much different. But I think we're a long way away from that.
And I think that, you want both Nevada and Arizona. I think a lot of Republicans around the country would take either one.
We're going to hold both.
And keep their fingers crossed about Georgia. Gentlemen, stand by if you would. Let's bring in Steve Hilton from the host of The Next Revolution. Steve, you've been watching this all night. I want to know your takeaway. What do you think of the overall? I mean, let's face it, the polling apparently was a little bit off. In the past few years or few cycles, it's been in favor of Democrats, undercounting Republicans, and this time it either undercounted Democrats or overcounted Republicans. Your thoughts?
I think the polling and also the messaging that was coming from the campaigns. So, and I think looking at the results as they've come in tonight and the commentary about what's happening, I think that early on in the days running up to today, perhaps there was too much optimism about what the Republicans were going to achieve. Now I think I'm seeing too much pessimism about what looks like has happened. I mean, it looks like there will be a House majority. We don't know the size. We know it's not going to be as big as many people wanted, but what does that mean? It means that the legislative agenda that many people in this country have experienced in such a destructive manner, we don't need to go through all the issues, but that's dead in the water. That's it. It means we can have the investigations that so many people have been demanding to get accountability for the failures of the pandemic, the origins of the pandemic, the corruption of the Biden family. All these things now can happen. And then if you look at individual races, Lee Zeldin didn't win in New York, but the latest number there I saw, he came within he's around 5% behind. That's an incredible result in a state like New York to close the gap so much. A lot of this change that I think people want to see, you're not going to get it in one go. Same with Oregon, with the governor's race there, even closer. So I think there are many things to be optimistic about. You've got to be realistic as well, but I think that we shouldn't lurch from being overly optimistic to overly pessimistic. I think a couple further points I'd make in terms of the political implications. Apart from what we're going to see in terms of the legislative agenda in Congress and the investigations, I think the big point for me is that the Democrats, and you can already see it in the way they're reacting, they are going to take this as a green light to keep going with their far-left extremist agenda. They're going to say, we don't need to evaluate whether we've lost touch with the mainstream on issues like crime and climate and so on. They're not going to have that. They're going to say, full steam ahead with this far-left agenda. In the long term, I think that helps Republicans, as does the other implication, which is that it seems like Biden 2024 is much more likely tonight after this. And in the end, I think that also helps the GOP.
Yeah. Steve Hilton, stand by if you would. We have a lot more to talk to you about. Meantime, stick around for continuing live coverage of Democracy 2022, the control of the House and the Senate still hang in the balance. An updated look at the numbers next. And welcome back to Fox News, continuing coverage of election night, Democracy 2022. With us is Anita Vogel back in studio. I'm wondering, we talk about issues, and we as journalists have been doing this a long time, Anita, and we wonder how much abortion played into this, right? Because the Democrats really put all their eggs in one basket several months ago of abortion. They think it was going to be the cut. And then all of a sudden, about 4, 5, maybe 6 weeks ago, it looked like the abortion issue was starting to go away a little bit because it was inflation.
Yep,
it was
for
crime.
sure.
It was the border. And now all of a sudden people are going to be rethinking that.
Yeah, I think they are. And you're right, Trace, because we've been looking at so many polls over the last several weeks, even the last month or two. And at the top of the polls, always the economy, inflation, gas prices, crime, education. Abortion was always much farther down the list. And so now you have to wonder, did it play a larger role? But if you look at some of the states where the governors had big wins, in Georgia, Governor Kemp reelected, Texas Governor Abbott, in Florida, Governor DeSantis, all of these governors are backing abortion bans and very restrictive laws on abortion. And they won handily. So you have to wonder, but if you look at a state like Pennsylvania, then you wonder, did it play a role there with John Fetterman? He talked a lot about it on the campaign trail.
Yeah, but you make a very good point, because, you know, you look at these numbers and you analyze them and you look at what happened in Florida, and there was a red wave. I mean, early in the night, people were looking at Florida thinking, that's a wave. That's what a wave looks like. When you see Marco Rubio winning with numbers like that, and you see, you know, Ron DeSantis winning with numbers like that.
In
I mean,
Miami-Dade.
he won by, right, in Miami-Dade County. And so it brings into the other part of this thing where you said, well, listen, you know, Latinos are starting to move toward the GOP. Black voters starting to move toward the GOP. Suburban white women starting to move to the GOP. And you look at Miami-Dade County and you're thinking, bingo, bingo, bingo. That's exactly what's happening. And then you look at the rest of the country and you think, well, maybe not.
Yeah, it is really hard to say. It's confusing. There's definitely be a post-mortem on this.
Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know. Maybe it was one of those stealth issues, or maybe it was always an issue, and it just didn't show up in those polls.
Yeah. Anita, back to you in moments.
Yeah,
Thank you. Joining us now, Fox News contributors Leslie Marshall and Jason Chaffetz. Welcome to you both. I find it, Jason, to you first, fascinating, because you look at the strategy, right? And you look at, we go back to 2020 when Joe Biden, he just kind of sat in the basement. He sat in the basement and it seemed to work. And now you have all of these candidates refusing to debate, right? You have Katie Hobbs in Arizona, didn't want to debate Kari Lake because, oh, Kari Lake's a bully, and Kari Lake does. And so it appears, and we're clearly, I'm not calling this because Arizona is early, but it appears so far that some of these strategies have worked. Your thoughts?
Yeah, no, they truly have. Trace, look. It's something like 98% of incumbents win re-election. And despite the country saying, hey, about 88% feel like we're going in the wrong direction, by and large, the country kept going in the same trajectory. I think the high point for the Republicans was obviously what happened in Florida. They better look at Ron DeSantis and Marco Rubio, because they made some big things happen there, coupled with strong showings in the House. That was a tsunami there in Florida for the Republicans. But for the rest of the nation, terribly disappointing for Republicans. And there better be a reality check there, because if you can't beat the Democrats with all those main issues on the table, and an ineffective president who can't communicate, a vice president who's absent on the political stage, then when are you going to win? And if you can't win in that scenario and really be able to take the fight to the Democrats, you got some big issues going into 2024, and there better be some changes, or Republicans are going to take another shellacking. They should have dominated tonight, and they didn't.
And it's amazing to me, Leslie, that you hear Jason, you hear other political analysts saying, you know what, this is a bad night for Republicans. And it's not often that it's a bad night for Republicans when they likely regain the House. And we don't know about the Senate. I mean, who knows what happens in the Senate? They may very well retake the Senate. But it seems to me like Democrats are satisfied with the outcome because they were told for so many weeks that the wave was coming.
Yeah, not a wave. And hey, Lindsey Graham said this is not a red wave. I'm agreeing with some of the things Jason says. I'm agreeing with Mark Thiessen, who was on earlier tonight. And I think the Republican Party needs to take a good, hard look in the mirror. Look, Ron DeSantis in his state of Florida, which is no longer a swing state, clearly a red state, he's the Republican champion, not former President Donald Trump. And if you look at the majority of the candidates that Donald Trump backed, not looking, like it was so good. And that fringe element of the Republican Party, those election deniers, that is not helpful to the Republican Party, and they need to look in the mirror and they need to regroup.
I think a lot of Republicans, maybe you're right, but I think a lot of Democrats also have to look in the mirror. The Democrats still lost the House, Leslie. Maybe the numbers were not what they thought, but the Democrats still lost the House. And to say that only Republicans need to look in the mirror and everything Democrats are doing is hunky-dory, you look at what happened in New York. Kathy Hochul won by 4. Maybe 4, maybe 5 points. But the rest of the ticket, the Democrats on the rest of the ticket are getting binged out left and right in New York because there was something going on, and that something was her ignoring the crime issue and a lot of other things that New Yorkers were like, okay, enough is enough. Go ahead.
Well, look, I would agree with. Oh, sorry. I thought it was me. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Jason.
Now, there's nothing to be too excited about on the Democratic side of the aisle. I totally agree with that. Again, it was the night of incumbents. And if you were an incumbent, you pretty much got to stay in your seat. But, you lose the Sean Maloney seat in New York. There's some real problems that the Democrats have. They didn't exactly convince the country that, hey, if you stick with us, then we're going to get more of this. Like, what was that argument? And certainly they weren't going out and defeating the Republicans. Again, I think Republican expectations were 20, 30, 40 additional seats in the House, 52, 53, 54 in the Senate, and it just didn't get there.
Yeah, Leslie, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'll give you the last word.
Look, I think when you're talking about double digits, like 20, 30, some people are saying 50, and it might be 1 to 5. Heck, some people are saying it may not even be control. You may end up with equal or less the power in the majority that the Democrats have now. I don't think that's great. Gubernatorial, you have Massachusetts flipped to blue, Maryland flipped to blue. You have Democrats putting forth so many firsts, and one of the things I want to personally say as a Democrat, thank you to the youth voters. They registered to vote, they came out to vote, and a lot of them are actually going to be going to Washington, and I think that's pretty awesome for the future of our nation.
Yeah, but the Republicans in the gubernatorial categories had their own good night. Jason, Leslie, stand by, if you will. Kevin Corke, because you look at what happens around the country, and Ron DeSantis had a fantastic night, and so did Greg Abbott, and so did Brian Kemp, and so might, in Oregon, might they elect the first Republican governor in that state since 1982. So to say the Republican gubernatorial candidates didn't have a good night is not a fair assessment.
Not quite, because we still don't have all the information. But I would say this, and I kind of raised this in our conversation earlier, Trace. You have to look at what the machinery was like before the election. When the Republicans go back and they unpack what happened, and by any measure, this was not a successful night, even if they captured the House. I think Leslie did make a good point, which is you sort of expected it to be a bigger performance, maybe closer to a wave, maybe a bit of a ripple is what we ended up with. But I think they have to really step back and say, what are we doing about early voting? What are we doing about mail-in balloting? How are we going to increase those numbers? Because if they don't, and we saw this, by the way, play out in 2020, they'll continue to have defeats and minor victories like we saw tonight, and that's got to be unsettling for the leadership.
Which is not to say, Anita, that you can just ignore crime, right? Which is not to say that you can not mention the word inflation, and as some lawmakers say, inflation is some foreign word that only a few people use. Everybody uses the word inflation. And it's not to say you should just ignore the border and let them keep coming. It's not to say these are proper and fair assessments on the rest of what's happening in this country.
No, and if you look at the closing days of the New York governor campaign, Kathy Hochul was forced to talk about crime. She wasn't talking about it for a long time, but in the closing days, she was forced to talk about it because Lee Zeldin made it an issue front and center. And these issues are not going away. Crime, the economy, inflation, they're here. And, you know, because the Republicans didn't have a huge victory tonight doesn't mean that these issues are going away tomorrow. They're still here.
Yeah, it's interesting. Stand by, both of you. What I want to bring in Freedom Works economist Steve Moore, who's going to get some more on the economy, because the economy in almost every poll, Steve, was the #1 issue. And everybody thought, because the economy is the #1 issue, well, man, oh man, are the Democrats going to get shellacked in this election. Didn't happen. What's your assessment?
Well, I very seldom admit that I was wrong, Trace, but I was in that camp, that I thought the Democrats would take a shellacking for what they've done to our country with the $4 trillion increase in government spending and the runaway debt and the runaway inflation. But, you know, I've been in this game a long time, 35 years or so. This may be the strangest election I've ever seen in this sense that, you know, we know that people are angry. They're angry about inflation. They're angry about the out-of-control border. They're angry about, you know, crime and other issues. And yet, I don't think there was a single incumbent in either party. I may be wrong about this. There might have been one or two exceptions. Not one incumbent governor or senator lost, which means the voters said, you know, whatever you're doing, keep doing it.
But the poll said the opposite, Steve, and that's what you can make your point. But I just had to bring this up because in the Fox News voter analysis, 75% of voters, Steve, said the country is on the wrong track. 75% of voters said that the economy was poor or not so good. 75%. We can't get 75% of the country to say, send mom a Mother's Day, a card on Mother's Day, much less agree on economic figures. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. You're kind of making my point. 75% of the people went into the voting booth, say they don't like the direction the country's going in, and then they pulled the lever for the incumbents. So I think that's a kind of strange outcome. Now, I think it'll be really fascinating to see what happens with the stock market tomorrow. I mean, the stock market was betting on a pretty big red wave, and that didn't happen. The other thing is, and one of your commentators made this point, but I want to reiterate it. The Democrats may rue what happened tonight in the sense that they may believe that the voters are saying, oh, we like your agenda, we like your you know, big spending, we like the massive increase in the debt, we like your you know, soft on crime issues. And if that happens, you know, this is a bad night for Republicans, but 2 years from now, if they run on the same election kind of agenda, maybe they're not going to have that happy result. And I agree, by the way, that the big winner tonight, I think we've all said this, is Ron DeSantis. I mean, a 20-point victory. Right. You know, and one other quick thing. You know, you talked about New York, and we, you know, Hochul won by what, 5 or 6 percentage points? 5. The reason that Lee Zeldin didn't win that race. Okay, so here I'll tell you the reason why Lee Zeldin didn't win that race. You ready? Because there were 1.5 million people over the last decade that have left New York, and most of them are Republicans. And guess where they are now, Trace? They're in Florida.
Yeah, they're in Florida. They're building that red wave in Florida. I mean, that's
there you go.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of part of it. Dana Perino was saying, listen, people are leaving New York, just scrambling to get out of New York, right? And they're going to Florida, and look what's happening down in Florida. Steve Moore, thank you for coming on. We may bring you back later just to get more insight. Meantime, we are just getting started. Much more ahead as our special election coverage continues. We've got some updates in the Senate races coming up next. Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Democracy 22. Let's talk some more about how results are shaping up tonight in the western states with our man in the Pacific Northwest, KTTH Seattle Talk Radio host, Jason Rantz. Jason, great to see you. I want to get your assessment because they've kind of either stopped or they're telling us we're not going to have results in either Oregon or Washington. We know the governor's race in Washington is a done deal. It's over. One, does that surprise you? And two, what are we seeing and what's happening in Oregon?
Yeah, so the Senate race, I know it's been called, it's going to get tighter over the course of the next couple days. I think it's going to be very difficult for Tiffany Smiley to overcome the race at this point, but it is going to be tighter. The reason why it's taking so long is we are 100% mail-in, and a lot of people vote on the last day, and they tend to be Republicans here in Washington who vote on that last day, which is why when you look at Washington's 8th congressional district, I believe this is going to be a pickup for Republicans. Matt Larkin is at 47% to Kim Schreier, the Democrat incumbent, who's at 52%. Now, in order to win in this district, and really in order to win in Washington, if you're in King County, you've got to get about 40% of the vote. That's where Seattle is located.
Right.
Matt Larkin's at 38% of the vote. We have over 150,000 left. He's trending really, really well and overperforming in the other counties in this district. So I do believe that he's going to he's going to end up being the winner, but probably by about 2 or 3 points. Same thing in Washington's 3rd congressional district. You've got Joe Kent, who is running up against Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez. She's the Democrat currently in the lead at 53%. But when you look at the numbers that still have yet to be counted, they likely will trend in Joe Kent's direction. He has a tendency to come with a win at the last minute. In Oregon, I think it's also important to point out same general issues. I think it's trending well right now for a Republican pickup with Lori Chavez DeRemer. She's at 53%. Right. To Jamie McLennan Skinner. She's at 47%. This would be a pickup for Republicans. And then, of course, you're looking at the governor's race in Oregon. It's still very tight. It's about 1% difference right now between the Democrat Tina Kotek and the Republican Christina Drazen. The issue here is that, and we're kind of seeing it in Georgia with that third-party candidate who's running, Betsy Johnson, in this case, is getting about 9% of the vote. And I think she's stealing some of those votes from the Republican this time.
And I wonder, Jason, if we can go back and we can put up that governor's race between Tina Kotek and Drazen just to see. I want to see what the percentage of the vote is, because that's kind of key here. They're very close. I mean, we're talking about potentially the first Republican governor in Oregon since 1982. I think I'm close on that thing, Jason, but I'm wondering.
Yeah, he was out at 89.
Okay, 89, but that's where it is the last elected governor. And so it's interesting. I'm wondering what the percentage of the race is and why we're being told, there it is, Christine Drazen, 44.6, 45.8. This thing is very close, and the percentage just 62. So there's a ways to go, which is why you've got Oregon election officials saying maybe not getting a call in this race tonight.
Yeah, it's very unlikely you'll get a call, especially when it's that close. And the fact that it is that close, similar to Washington State, Oregon Republican voters tend to vote on the last day. And part of that is just not necessarily trusting the mail-in ballot system. So you'll start to see that kind of significant shift tomorrow. If the Republicans in any of these races are going to pull it off, we'll know tomorrow, probably mid-afternoon. Oregon, again, kind of, it trickles in from Multnomah County throughout the night, but other districts, other counties, they're not as quick as Multnomah County, and that's where the delay is going to be.
Yeah. Jason, stand by if you would. I want to bring back in Mark Lauder and Kevin Walling here, because it's interesting when you look at some of the Western races, because we all think, oh, we're on the East Coast, and as soon as the East Coast goes to bed, oh, it's done. Let's go to bed. Let's call the House. Let's bring out Kevin McCarthy, and we'll all do our thing, right? But you think there's a lot of the country that has yet to be counted, and as Jason is pointing out there, listen, the Republicans could pick up a few more here and there. There's going to be some grab bag stuff that might play into an extra House member here. So, you know, that's one of those things you have to look at, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's one of the big takeaways from tonight is Republican gains in traditional blue areas. And even if you don't close the deal and win the race, I mean, the fact that we're talking about the New York governor's race on a midterm means Republicans are doing well. But we picked up seats in New York. We had historic gains, you know, in California. We're going to pick up a number of seats in California. We're talking Oregon. We're talking Washington State. I think there's a lot of opportunities there. The fact that we're talking about Nevada, you know, in a Senate and a governor's race, those are big gains for Republicans. Whether it takes another cycle to finish it, that'll be the bigger issue.
And I wonder, Kevin, you know, listen, everybody's giving the big applause to the Democrats. They turned out better than but, you know, things go a little differently in Nevada. Things go a little differently in Arizona, and all of a sudden, the GOP controls the Senate. The GOP controls the House. And then all of a sudden, Democrats not quite as happy as they were 15 minutes ago.
It's very true. I don't think we should break out the champagne for losing the House of Representatives, which is likely to be the case in the next couple of hours to days. But to Mark's point, Republicans had a good night in certain areas, New York being one of them, Florida being certainly one of them as well. So we also, not just the Republicans need to do that forensic study that Mark Thiessen talked about, but Democrats need to do as well, especially with drop-offs that we saw in core constituencies of the Democratic Party, whether it be African Americans, Latinos, the suburbs, some of those races. But I do think you saw some of a drag on the top-tier races like Kathy Hochul, coming up short in some of these House races. We saw the flip with really strong candidates in Sherry Beasley and Tim Ryan, even though we came up short. They were able to pull some folks across the finish line down ballot where we Democrats actually flipped some House seats in North Carolina and Ohio.
And I've only got about 30 seconds left, Mark, but not to look forward here, not to jump the gun, but you look into 2024 and the races look a lot stronger, a lot better situated for Republicans than they did this time around. So they've got something to look forward to.
Map absolutely is in our favor in 24, and having the majority in the House and hopefully the Senate will put some very difficult votes in front of Democrats and put them out of touch with their voters at home.
We shall see. Stand by if you would, gentlemen. Results still coming in tonight. Stay tuned to our Fox News as our special election coverage continues. Still waiting for the call on the Senate race in Wisconsin. Next. Welcome back to our continuing coverage of Democracy 2022. Now let's turn to the national political reporter for the Washington Examiner, Selena Zito. She joins us live right now. And Selena, I know you have extensively covered the state of Pennsylvania, a lot of northeastern states, but I'm wondering if you saw this coming, if you thought this was the outcome that was going to happen in Pennsylvania tonight.
I thought that Oz was going to win this by about a 0.5 percentage point. That's what I've been saying for the past week. He had made incredible inroads and really turned out to be this very mature, very good candidate. And you don't go from 18 points behind to 60,000 votes and not have done all the, left everything out on the field.
And
I think a couple things hurt.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. What didn't get him over the finish line?
Well, I think, 700,000 people voting before they saw that debate was probably, that was hard to that wasn't impossible to overcome, but that was hard to overcome. Yeah. And I think also in the state, there's a little bit of a Trump problem. Voters may still like him, love what he did. However, he was too involved. There was too much of his presence in the race, at the rallies, but also the night before the election, he hints that he's going to come out again and run again. Voters were looking forward at that moment, and I think that dragged on him.
Yeah. It's interesting because you look at what happened, and after that debate, and I know you talk about the mail-in voting. We're going to talk about this more later, but boy, I've got about 15 seconds left. Everybody thought that debate would change the entire scope of the race. Turned out it might have, but not enough. 15 seconds.
Right. 700,000 votes are hard to overcome. In an election won by 60,000, or at least at this point, 60,000 votes. We'll never know, but, I think there was an impact. There was a missed opportunity had that debate been held earlier.
The Washington Examiner, Selena Zito, will bring you back. Selena, thank you. With us now is Fox News contributor Jason Chaffetz. Jason, I just wanted to bring you back because there's a couple of things I wanted to ask you. I wanted to play this soundbite from the man who hopes to be the next Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, and I'll get your thoughts on the other side. It's coming. Hold on. I mean, it's 2:55 in the morning, Jason, right?
Yeah, we got to wake up the tape guy. Yeah, come on.
Let me tell you, you're out late. But when you wake up tomorrow, we will be in the majority and Nancy Pelosi will be in the minority. American people are ready for a majority that will offer a new direction, that will put America back on track. Republicans are ready to deliver it.
I mean, you know him. He put a brave face on it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, he put a happy smile on it, but he's got to be disappointed because the margin of victory, the number of House seats that are in the Republican side of the aisle will determine, A, whether or not Kevin McCarthy can even pull it off and become the Speaker of the House, and what sort of majority is he going to be able to have to govern, because it's easy to be in the minority. It's very difficult to be in the majority. Right now, I've been talking to some of my former congressional colleagues. It's a scrambled eggs right now. I don't know that it's even certain that Kevin McCarthy can pull that off. He's got to be in a fight to get the majority, but then he's going to be in the fight of his life to actually be the Speaker with such a small margin. It's a question mark as to whether or not he can actually pull that off.
Yeah, and when you say scrambled eggs, is that what you're talking about? Is that maybe, maybe he's not as secure as he thinks he is?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a serious discussion. Republicans are scheduled next Tuesday to gather in Washington, D.C., new members and everybody, and they'll have a vote. And I think most people anticipate it, but it's not for certain.
Jason, we'll get back to you. Another full hour of Fox News special election coverage is coming up next.